they're all like doctors and big money city boys. I was like, I haven't got anything that you guys can. So I just thought, all right, well, I'll explain rowing to them. And they asked these questions. I was like, oh yeah, no, that's. So then it made me like completely think differently about it.
Hey, what is up? Welcome to Last Stroke Counts. We have the director of rowing at Clare's Cold School, Tom Jost, in the house. And personally, I used to call him the Leander's Nightmare back in the day. We had some good humdingers with the Clare's Court cruise during my 4 years. But yeah, please welcome Tom to the podcast.
Hello.
Thanks for coming on, man. I think it's a name that a lot of people will know. Definitely sort of in the junior circuit, you've made bit of a name for yourself and for Clare's Court, I think. You've certainly been there quite a long time. I think I look like 15, 16 years now.
Yeah, I was head of it as of 2012, but I've been there prior to that part-time as well. Yeah.
So a long time. Like a lot of coaches have bounced around a lot of different jobs, so I think that'll be an interesting one, because also you're at Maidenhead for quite a while as well.
10 years.
All in the same area.
Yeah, haven't moved far.
Yeah, cool. Definitely be interesting to get into, but like as we start with everyone, I think really interested to see how you got into rowing yourself in the first place.
So my cousin was he was quite bright, and he got a scholarship to Latimer School in London. And then, so we're not a rowing family at all. But then when he was there, he got into rowing and absolutely loved it. So and he's 11 years older than me. So when I was young, we used to go and watch him race. So we went and watched him race in the Tideway and a few different regattas. And then I remember watching him, so it was 1989. We went to watch him at Henley Royal, and they got to the Saturday, which I just thought was quite normal, So I remember where I was watching, I watched that. And that was the first race actually I had seen him where he hadn't been winning. So because he'd just won everything we'd gone to see. So then off the back of that, I basically just wanted to row straight away. And I think my parents tried to see if we could go and do some rowing at Maidenhead Rowing Club, and they said I wasn't allowed to till I was 13. So I was 13 on the Tuesday, and then on the Thursday was the first time I could row. And I went down and I rowed on the Thursday night, and then just that was it. I would never stop. And that was in 96, so I'd have been, 13, and then carried on through since then, really.
Pretty keen.
Yeah. I wasn't one of these people that we were talking earlier about people that kind of fell into, we weren't really that interested. I was obsessed from the word go. Well, but even before the word go, I was always wanted to do it.
I love that we've had a few Olympians who were like, I did rowing to like get out of cross country. Yeah. Or like it was so many I didn't want to do something else. And now you're like the best in the world at it. Absolutely mental.
Yeah. And I was complete opposite of that. I wanted to do it from the word go.
What did you like about it? Just freedom, being out of the water?
Yeah, I guess there's an element of that. It's weird because I have got zero attention span but I'm really obsessive as well. Probably like some sort, I don't know, somebody could dissect it, but I've got, it's the fact that, each session leads on to the next one. So like if you learn a skill, you take that into the next session, then you learn more and you take it into the next session, and then training kind of ties it through. I don't know. I think it was kind of the fact that I could, it's not necessarily fun at the time, but it's certainly fun later. Like you always talk about type 1 and type 2 fun. Have you heard of this?
Yeah. Delayed.
Yeah. Like a lot of rowing is horrific at the time of doing it, but you get home and it's like, they have that absolute love for it.
The endorphins.
I like asking people, like, what do you love about rowing? And I remember when people would ask me, what do you love about rowing? And I'd be like, well, it's not the early mornings, it's not the rain, it's not the cold, it's not the horrible sessions, it's not the ergos, it's not being tired, it's not having my hands it's not having my hands knackered and bleeding. It's not any of these things. And you think, but for some reason I keep going back. So it's a combination. I think the thing I think quite recently in my own head is like fun every season, not fun every day. Yeah. But nothing's fun every day.
No.
It doesn't matter what job you have. Nothing's fun every day.
Like I always think when coaching now, we can make training really fun by getting some footballs out and kicking about or playing crab football or, like whatever it might be. But they won't take it home with them. So it's kind of like, I like with rowing, often you take it home with you. And I'm a big daydreamer, so I like having something to daydream about. So, so that was really it. And I think I obviously being on the river on your own And like when you can get out in a single and you have got that freedom. I guess it's like when you first learn to drive a car.
Yeah.
And then that first time you go out in your car on your own,
Yeah.
it's like, you know. And I remember, being on the single, you know, being in Maidenhead and rode up and down my single as a junior and just thinking, like, it was just like heaven. So really from that, then that kind of, I was very kind of obsessive about my training then. Well, not about my training, it's about the sport really, and as a part of it being training. But yeah, it's kind of then led into what's come since then, really.
So, like, have you watched it at the Olympics? Like, have you like seen the Barcelona and Atlanta games to like spur you on to like?
Yeah, so I don't really remember '88 because would have been 5 then. I don't know whether we watched it or not.
No.
Not really. But I do remember the Cell Brothers race in '92, and I remember being downstairs. Everyone in my house, I don't know whether it was early mornings or whether it was a replay or something, I can't remember. But I remember being downstairs in my house and watching that race. And obviously it's like the most amazing race ever.
Yeah.
Probably another thing that kind of stoked the fire because it was still 4 years before I was able to row. Watching that race and then running upstairs and putting it on in my parents' little black and white TV in their bedroom so that we would watch, you know, they had the replay of them rowing through in the last bit. So that one I remember a lot. 96, well, that was only a few months after I started rowing, so that was a really big one. And I had a video that I would chuck in and press record on as soon as, you know, it became on the telly.
Wicked.
So 92, 96 were big ones for me, and like as far as watching is concerned. And they always seemed to be in the school holidays, so it was like, you know, you'd come down in the morning and I don't know, I love the Olympics so much. So when you put it on in the morning and they have like usually some amazing music that comes on, then to introduce what's happened overnight or, you know, the day before, whatever. Yeah. So it's kind of, then 2000 was another one that just kind of happened at the right time for me. It was in the beginning of my final year of being a junior. So yeah, November of my J18 season.
Yeah, when things are like heating up, when like, especially like when just before you like exit being a junior, like you start to get a bit more serious. Like the scores get a big. Like people are getting close to 6 minutes, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And then it was like gold fever hit at the right time as well. Yeah. So it was kind of, I had a few things which were like obsessive. I mean, I'm genuinely must have watched gold fever like 100 times probably in that 1 year, so just on repeat, just watching, you know.
So did they used to like, was it a genuine TV series that like aired every week or something?
I think they did one a week.
Like a BBC series, yeah.
Yeah. And then I recorded it. And then they did a follow-up one after the Olympics as well. Which
I saw that one.
Yeah. Oh, you did? Yeah.
After we recorded Tim's episode, someone was like, oh, if you watch Gold Fever, this was amazing. I was like, actually, I never have. I need to do it. So as soon as we finished recording.
Yeah, when we were getting through, I said, right, we were talking about all sorts of stuff. And I was like, Tim, we've got to talk about the hand.
Oh, yeah.
He's like, yeah, okay. And then people's like, what's this? I was like, what? You don't know about the hand in the window? No, I didn't. Obviously, as a junior, he was in Poland, so it was a bit probably not as interested.
Yeah.
So then, literally, as soon as we finished recording, like, I just sat in my car and just watched the whole thing. Like the whole Gold Fever. It was brilliant.
Oh, it's so good. And you can imagine that hitting at the right age as well. It was like double whammy.
I'm just annoyed that I didn't watch it when I was at Leon. That I would have so loved it.
Oh, yeah.
That would have been brilliant.
And also just that crew, because I don't know. There's been obviously big crews and big names in rowing since then, but it was like they kind of went beyond rowing. There was like, I remember when there was a regatta magazine that had front cover and it was I think like Pinson at stroke, Redgrave at bow. And it was the comment was like seats for Rio, seats for Sydney or something like that. It was like 96, 97. And I think my cousin actually got me that as a Christmas present one year because he got it delivered and then he gave it to me as a Christmas present. I remember reading that one like back to back. And then that first World Championships in 8 Burlet when they won in the 4, like it's still now that World Championships was amazing. That 4s race. And then you had Jamie Coven in the single. I don't know if you remember that. Right. So Jamie Coven won the single that year. And it was just like, there's footage of him just side on. He hits this banging little rhythm. And I watched that one over and over again as well. And then the 4s race, they go off the start. And on the BBC, the commentary didn't work for like the first 500 meters. Oh. But you could hear the boats. And I just remember that sweet rhythm, like Pinson with Foster behind them. And just watching it. And the stern was just like, you know, when you get the water flicking up off the stern, I was like, oh, God. Yeah. So that one, I watched that on repeat about a bazillion times ever as well. And then the Coven race was the one that Greg Sell got bronze in. Yeah. Remember that? Yeah, and Andre Vilm the second. Just a great race. So yeah, that period of racing, well, I was just obsessed about all of it. It was great.
But that's also back, like, I look at now, like kids we've coached and they have access to YouTube and they can just watch every race from the Olympics all day, every day, all the time. And I explained that back, like when I was rowing, like there was like a DVD in my school with like, it had the Athens final on.
Oh yeah.
It had the 2003 boat race when the guy collapsed, super close finish, and there was like one other race, and that's like all you had.
Yeah.
Like I guess we were talking about 2000, 2001 when I started rowing. 2003 when I started rowing, or 2001 when I started secondary school. So like there was stuff on the internet, but you didn't just have access to it.
Yeah, much. Which is quite lucky because I wouldn't have stopped.
Yeah. I think that as well.
I had a video. I remember I used to have the video which I would leave at the point at which I could record again in case anything came on, like Transworld Sport on a Sunday morning or something. If they did like a random bit about a random crew, you could just chuck the video and press record and watch it back. So so it was, for me, I had like a stack of videos, which I actually tried to find the other day at my parents, and no idea what that's. Well, 20 years later then.
Still on VHS, yeah?
Yeah, I don't know where they've gone though. They'll be somewhere. They'll probably be in the loft or something. But it wouldn't also be surprising if they've gone.
The tape
20 years later.
Through.
I don't have a video recorder. I don't think anyone does now. Yeah.
I sort of found the same way. Like, I remember at school just being like, I wish I could like row as my subject, because like all my subjects is boring, but rowing, I just like can't eat up enough of it. Like, getting books out of the library and talking to everyone and going over it and video analysis, and it's just like, that subject that's kind of hit.
But then I don't know if you had it where if I had a teacher like in English, if they were like write about rowing, suddenly I would be the most focused man on the planet. Or in art, if I could draw or paint a picture of somebody rowing. So there was hooks that they could use for it.
Yeah, definitely for me. So my school had a sixth form, so we could go to sixth form, but there was certain level of grades you had to get.
Right, yeah.
Behaviour, the naughty kids weren't asked back, things like that. So all of a sudden this thing that I hate was like, but if you want to keep rowing, like you got to get the grades.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really powerful thing. Like,
it's massive.
You can turn anything into how does it help my rowing?
Yeah. And then also kind of you have to be organized, irrespective of school. If you're not particularly kind of academic or whatever, like you've got to be organized with your diet and recovery and all those other things. So it's kind of, again, it hooks school into that because it's like, right, you've got to be on top of these things.
Schedule.
Otherwise you're going to not,
Yeah.
So it's kind of...
I started trying to, in sixth form, we started trying to just get our teachers used to the fact that we just turn up in sports kit all the time. And some of them didn't.
All on the table.
Just because we try and train before school and then come to school and then we try and train at lunch. Let's just try and train all the time. And a lot of the teachers were happy with it. But I remember my politics teacher, Mr. Lee, was just like, no, go and get your uniform on. It's like, it's not worked.
Yeah.
The plan was just, can we just live in rowing kit?
Yeah.
Not get shape. That's pretty gross. I don't know why.
But the all-in-ones are quite comfy, so...
Yeah.
Like trackies and a jump, whatever it was.
I remember when I first like wore a JL Lycra, like that was good. It was like nice and comfy and padded, and it was like in Leander shapes.
Like Kevlar or something. JL Lycras. I've got Lycras from JL that are like 25 years old that look brand new. I don't know whether they still make that. I just know that you're going to have to wait 4 months for them to turn up. So
I was just
cost money.
PSA announcement. I'll have to cut this out because we're not promoting rival kit on this podcast.
Oh, right. So I beg your pardon.
No, I'm just kidding.
Everyone likes a classic JL. That's what we're talking about, the classic kit.
Classic kit. None of this new stuff.
So after you fell into it, was there a good junior setup at Maidenhead?
So it was me and two of my oldest pals I was at toddlers with actually that started together. So mate of mine called Woody, another mate of mine called Paul, and kind of we all went down together on the same day. First started together, and then we kind of got the ball rolling. And we were the only juniors in the whole club. This was when Maidenhead was on the other side of the river. Do you know, next to the bridge, there's like a little garden there.
Where it used to be.
Yeah, we were shown that like it was like on the other side of the bridge back in the day before they built a new boathouse.
So that's gorgeous. Where it was when I first started.
Yeah,
and three of us kind of got the ball kind of rolling. We kind of really got into it, and then we needed obviously a fourth person to make up a quad, and there was a lad from school just another friend of mine called Tom Raymond. And then he I don't know whether he came down or whether we invited him down. I don't really remember how it worked. So he came down, and then he was just like freakishly strong, really small, but freakishly strong. So we were like, brilliant. So we had a quad, and there was 4 of us. And that was the squad. And we coached by, there was loads of different coaches down at Maidenhead that kind of got involved at one time or another. But there was a chap called Derek Cook who has now since passed away a couple of years back. But he sort of took the lead on looking after us. And he was like, he'd done loads of stuff in rowing. So he was one of the first people to sort of push through bringing together composite crews for the junior team. Prior to that, it was just like the national champions became the junior crew. Mm-hmm. And he handed me this paper a few years back of like that he'd written up a kind of a sort of your first sort of selection plan as to how to bring a crew together. I can't remember what year it would have been, like late 70s, early 80s or something like that. But yeah, so he just happened to be at Maidenhead, and he was kind of the first person. Up until that point, it was always like, sports is something you do and like a little hobby. He was the first person that kind of made me feel that it mattered, which I wasn't particularly academic and anything like that. But so he finally kind of gave me sort of something to build my confidence on, really.
Like a path to follow.
Yeah. I remember we were at one of our first, in fact, it was our first ever race. And me and a pal of mine were in the double, and we lost in like the semi-final. And his granddad said, don't worry, boys, it's the taking part that counts. And Derek kind of went quiet. And he went, that's not what I tell him, actually. And I was like, I've never heard somebody disagree with that before. And I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It's only sport and all the rest of it. But as far as kind of, something for a young person to build their confidence around, it was massive. Yeah. So he made such a difference for me. And so we kind of then rode together J 14, 15, 16 and 17. And then a couple of them, kind of took it a bit easier in upper sixth. So then I sort of rode on my own in my last year of junior. And so that was kind of almost like my first year of coaching as well, because I always feel that I got loads and loads of coaching up until that age. And then I had like a year where I could just process it. And so I had enough time to go out and just work on something at my own speed and all the rest of it. So that's what I did when in 2001. I didn't really have a coach or a squad to row with that year. So it took up a lot of motivation. I always feel that I used up a good few years worth of motivation in the space of 10 months. Just because, I was
still only sport in the
scale. Yeah.
Do you think that was a lot to do with why you then moved into coaching? Or do you think that was something you always liked the idea of? Or
I always say that it was something I sort of fell into. Yeah. But then I look back, and I don't know if I did, because I remember we were talking about Nigel Weir. I had a meeting with him with my parents about how to get into coaching. So, why would I have had? I must have always wanted to go into coaching. And then, kind of off the back of that, I then went in my gap year, started doing some coaching, and then kind of that snowballed off the back of that. I think I had sort of always had it in the back of my mind that I wanted to go into it. But I think it was just being something involved in rowing still. I also wanted to go into boat building. That was another thing. My work experience was at Eton Racing Boats when I was like 14 or whatever. And that was 2 weeks of work. It was like heaven. Just stood there making rowing boats all day long. It was great. With Andy Cross, actually, who's still at Eton. And Eric Sims, who's obviously now... Yes, rowing. Yeah, it's great.
Davy Jones.
Yeah, so he...
Maidenhead rower, he still works there, doesn't he?
So he's still there. Yeah. He wasn't there then because
he's a bit before you. But so he was in my 08 Thames Cup.
Oh, was he?
Group.
Oh, were you in that one that won? Blinded. Oh, okay. Yeah.
So there was like seven of us monkeys rowing like absolute rowing like idiots, and there's Davy Jones. Honestly, there's some video footage when they took out the launch, so we're filming from behind.
Yeah,
and Davy is just balancing the whole way. He worked out his job was just like keep this boat level for these monkeys
and
we'll do well
and
he's honestly at the back just getting the job done.
So he was the first person I coached, actually.
Oh,
Yeah,
there you go.
at Maidenhead. So after I finished junior, then I went into coaching him. It just happened to be at Maidenhead, and I started coaching him. So it was kind of, it worked out very well, actually. It was kind of,
Yeah, coaching like comes from also like having the obsession to make the boat go fast, but not necessarily like wanting to do it yourself at a certain point.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
I felt that.
I saw something the other day. It was like it was talking about coaching from like an athlete's perspective, and they're like, "Is your coach interested in like longevity?" And one of the other things is like, "Are they obsessed?"
Right, yeah.
Because it's all right for you to be obsessed, but is that coach obsessed?
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, that's kind of something I've not really thought about."
Yeah.
but is important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember somebody talking about Ira Parry, somebody that she coached, and they said they really liked that she was on a mission.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I've never thought about that actually from an athlete's point of view. But looking back, probably the coaches I had that were on a mission and wanted to do it well were the ones I really got on well with. So it is weird, isn't it, that you have that kind of, you don't think as an athlete that the coach kind of is obsessed with it.
Yeah.
But then obviously now being a coach, like I was like probably more obsessed than I was as an athlete.
Yeah. I feel having coached, like as an athlete, I felt like I had my own sort of ambition and nerves and never worry, but only ever mine. And then as a coach, like now I'm sort of worried about everyone else's.
Yeah.
It feels like a lot more intense at times.
Yeah.
Plus, there's so many like moving parts. So you have control and oversight over like so many more things. So if you get bored of one thing, then there's like a million other like stuff that you can focus on.
On test days or regattas, you might have a group do really well and then a group do not so well. And it's really easy as a coach to kind of forget, oh, we've actually done really well, and just obsess about, well, how do we figure this? So I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of, it's a difficult one to get your head around as to how you kind of.
Yeah, nerves from a coach position. You don't think about that as an athlete.
Oh, no.
Coach will be nervous.
And actually I've had it twice where my watch has told me like
too high,
weird heart rate or whatever, and it starts buzzing at you. And both of them have been sat or stood on the start, waiting for a race to start as a coach, not as an athlete. Yeah. So very weird.
Which are the races that get you most hyped up? What is like Nuts Calls Henley?
Driving around the end of the island in that coaching launch at Henley, it's just horrific. Like, I remember there was somebody who's talking about, do you remember Jez Moore from?
The psychologist.
It was, they were talking, because he coached me in 2001.
No way.
Yeah.
Small world.
And he, somebody who he was coaching, maybe like Dan Tipney or someone like that, said that they remember on the final of their Forley, the boat coming round and just seeing him stood over the side being sick. Whether that was a true story or not, I don't know. But just that, I think as an athlete, very quickly there's a release, or you can just kind of hit the boat, growl, whatever. As a coach, you got to be there like whispering, not quiet, you're like, oh my God. That's horrific.
Plus, once the buzzer goes, like you're in the flow state, right? You're just focusing on the job. Versus as a coach, you're like, oh, how are they going to do? No crabs, please.
Or like what Coxes have said, because obviously they're in the race, they get all the adrenaline, all the hype, but they don't actually get out any energy. So then the race ends and they're like,
But isn't that nuts though?
Yeah.
If you it might have been Rory who was saying that they'd put heart rate straps on them, and they get to almost maximum heart rate. It's like, but it's interesting how much your mind plays a part in trying to keep your heart rate down during a race, because you can easily reach maximum heart rate without actually moving. So very weird. So at Henley, probably the worst. But I guess it's any kind of big race when you stood there on the start and it's quiet. That's horrible. I have to kind of talk and shout and laugh to kind of get all the emotions out. So when you're in a position where you can't do that, it's like...
Specifically at Henley, like, you're in that launch and then you have to sit still. Can't move, can't make a peep, nothing. At least if you're on a bike or Dorney or something, you can like send
that Henley launch. It's just like everything that they can do to make it more nerve-wracking, they've done. And you're just, oh God.
I've not been on it yet. I really want to go.
Nice.
I have, but I don't prefer it. I just freak, like, I just think that I will shout, or I would like make it.
Well, I had it once where I got shouted at by Fred Smallbone, because I just had my hand resting on the edge, leaning out the boat, and he thought I was signalling to the crew. So he turned around and shouted at me, and it's one of those situations. It was just a very weird situation, getting shouted at in the middle of a race, and somebody you can't say anything to. You just got to kind of take it. Yeah, that was pretty weird. But Yeah, no, not nice. Very weird. And I'm pretty sure I've nearly keeled over a few times those launches. And actually, if it wasn't for the fact that you kind of need to see the race as a coach, I'd very much prefer to just not be in there.
Just watch it on the telly.
Yeah,
on the big screen.
Yeah, but then if you kind of get to a final, all right, well, I don't need to be in there, but then you feel you sort of should be in there, so it's very weird.
Well, yeah, the athletes will want you to be there for them. They'll be like, oh my God, the coaches won't. Yeah. Where's he gone?
Yeah. But I know a lot of coaches that just don't go.
Yeah.
They'll stand there and just listen to it would have been the commentary in the past, but I guess you can now
watch it now. Yeah. So just before you went into coaching full time, you did make the junior team.
So I made the junior team in 01 in sweep. So I was a sculler, and I always have been a sculler. I learned to scull, and all my racing was in sculling. But then me and a lad from Windsor Boys School, a chap called Emilio Hernandez, got together in a pair, and then that went okay, and we kind of got ourselves through enough of the stages to kind of get into the trials process, and then just missed out on going to Munich, and then made it into the Junior Worlds team. But we were in a Coxless 4, but we were the bottom boat because they hadn't sent a Coxless 4 in years, and they wanted to start getting into the routine of doing that again. So they sent one as like a trial 4. So we didn't do very well. Which is actually, it's pretty weird because obviously for me at that time, like doing anything like that was such a massive deal, getting into the British team. It was like all my dreams come true. And then we're kind of in like the C final going flat out next to Moldova. You know what I mean? It was just kind of like a very weird, very weird situation where it's kind of, and if you speak to Richard Bolton about it, he always has a good laugh about it, but I care. It was like it was my big thing.
Is he still at Bryanston?
I think so. Yeah.
Still got the Vesta?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it was a big deal. And actually it was another one of those things that kind of gave me confidence to think that if I put my mind to something, I can go on and do something big with it, or not big with it. I can just succeed in life in general, really, because I kind of, it was something I put a lot of work into. So that was out in Duisburg. So it was a good world champs. Actually, a lot of people. So that was where Matt Langridge won his junior gold. Yeah. So that was quite cool to watch that one. And there was a load of people at that world champs that went on and did a lot of big stuff. So it was a good one to be at, and just like an amazing experience. Obviously coming off the back of gold fever, and I wasn't at a school or a club where like training camps were a thing. So I found it so bizarre in gold fever that they were like on these camps all over the place. So then to kind of go into like a world champs like camp in Chester, and then moving down to Dorney at that point where I was great. It was like living out, living like a proper person, like a proper athlete for a few weeks. It's great. So, that was 2001. And I had kind of hoped to go on and do more in that, but I then kind of, because I went into coaching, that sort of then took over more, and kind of my efforts went in that direction, which has kind of ended up being a career. So I suppose it's quite good thing that I did that, because otherwise I don't know what I'd have gone into. But,
It's pretty tough to do both, and certainly to do both well. I think if you're going to coach and put everything into it, and then try and find space to fit your sessions in. And,
yeah. Like the shape I'm in when I'm coaching is not a good shape. Because I think you come off the back of sessions, and it feels like you've done the session mentally.
Yeah.
And you've not done anything. I've probably sat there eating, probably, So as a consequence, like generally when I've been at my kind of bigger races as a coach, I've generally been quite a lot bigger.
I've had another thing, like when I finished rowing, I was like, okay, I've gone from training 16 times a week to like 3 or 4 for fun.
Yeah.
I'll have so much more time and energy. But then you put that into work. Even if you just sit at a laptop all day, it's still like that mental drain. It's different.
Yeah, really. Yeah, very much. So I would always think like mentally I'm as tired.
Whereas when I was training full time, like you actually just switch your head off.
Yeah.
You almost just like switch off, sit on the ergo, just go
house. And actually now kind of as with what I'm doing at Clare's Court, one of the things I'm always on the coaches to do is to make sure they keep up training.
Yeah.
Because I don't actually think if you train, I think you'd probably be in better place mentally than not.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, and especially when you get to those high pressure times, I always think if it's a good sign if you've got like a coach doing a run up the bank at Henley Regatta or so, you know what I mean? Something like that. So I think it's kind of, but it's difficult because it's the last thing you want to do. But actually, it's probably the number one thing you need to do.
Well, it's like that release we're saying. There's no other way to just get a bit.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it's easier said than done. And as much as I tell other people to do it, I never did it. So.
I think it's still good that, like, you know, you're instilling that, and then your coaches will then hopefully move that over to other coaches. Like, and hopefully that will
also,
spread.
I don't think it's a very good example. Now looking back on it, I don't think it's a very good example for me to be like 17 stone, stressed as anything when I'm coaching a crew, because they don't want to see a coach like that. You know, they want the coach that's kind of on top of things and all the rest of it, which I think I was, but certainly being kind of in a better mental state, i.e. because you've being able to just go for a run or sit on an erg or go on a bike ride.
I thought you were going to say it's not going to be a good image for you to be 17 stone telling other coaches to go for a run.
Oh yeah, no, well, yeah.
I think it's important. Like, definitely, having done some coaching. When I coached at Leander, I was like assistant. I had Carl Reed, and he was awesome and helped me out. Coaching this idiot.
Yeah.
But you sort of step out on your own, running programs and stuff. It gets incredibly stressful, and there's no. The other thing I didn't realize is you're there with everyone, but you're not part of the gang. You're the coach. So that relief of chatting and messing about and all that kind of other stuff, you kind of don't do because you're the other side. So you have a different relationship. You're quite often on your own talking. It's the other thing I didn't realize. You start talking to a group of athletes for like 5 minutes and they'll say nothing, and they'll just stare at you. And you're like, am I talking English? Yep. Does that make sense? I need to hear a yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then 5 minutes later, they completely lost the plot.
Yeah. I think it can be quite a lot more lonely than people think. Oh, yeah, coach, he's around. He's, Yeah, we see him. We have a laugh with him, whatever. But yeah, it's stressful.
Yeah.
And because I really struggled to like get out of the athlete mentality and not constantly kind of be putting myself in their position, be like, oh my God, I've got to cut them, or when you do seat racing and someone's going to lose and all this like stress.
That is the horrible part of it, is when you kind of, because you think like being a coach, oh yeah, great, you can help people's dreams come true and all this of it, but then it's kind of like you've also got to kill some people's dreams, and that's kind of like, oh yeah, I hate that. I still haven't got used to it now.
No,
like,
I don't think there's a lot to do it.
No.
So from 2001 2011, so 10 years at Maidenhead, and like you said, you were kind of the start of the Maidenhead junior squad. But I guess from that point on, that actually become quite well renowned as a decent junior program.
Yeah, So 2001. By that point, that was when Project Awesome had happened.
Okay.
So they had like a bit of a younger junior group there. Yeah. So then you had Ali Brooks, Louise Entwistle, Dave Jones. You had like a group there. Yeah. Like the ball was rolling with a junior program there. And so I started then doing some coaching with Dave Jones in my gap year, just as kind of, to do a bit of coaching. And he was like ridiculously good.
It's very good.
So it's quite a good one to start with. And then I remember like halfway through the season, I was like, is there anyone your age that's kind of a similar sort of standard? And he goes, oh yeah, there's one lad called Sam Ashburn. I was like, well, where does he row? He goes, oh, Maidenhead. So there was another boy at the club that I had no idea about that actually was also very, very good. So then he came into the group, and then I started coaching both of them. And they were J14s at that point. And they're just like it was like two amazing athletes. And so I started coaching them that year. And then I can't remember what they did. They definitely won national schools in the double, I think, that year. And then following year, I went to Brooks for like a term. I did a bit there.
Coaching?
No, so I started at Brooks as my plan was to go back into rowing again. And I did about 6 weeks. And then I was like, the stupid thing I did was I took a year off because I'd kind of seen like, none of my pals really are rowers. They're all, my pals from school. Yeah. So I lived like normal people for a little while, and then tried to go back into rowing. And I found it tough because I wasn't living with rowers either. So I'd kind of go training and then come back on a Saturday and it would be like 2:30 in the afternoon or something, and my housemates would just be getting up or still be asleep.
Yeah.
And I was just living on a very different kind of. So I did it for about 6 weeks, and then I was just like, I need to have a break from it. So knocked it on the head.
Yeah.
And then was at uni, probably, I can't remember how long, it was not the whole year. And then came back at the end of that year and started coaching Dave and Sam again. And they were J15s at that point. And then they then did the double and got the GB France slot as J15s.
Oh, nice.
So and I think at national schools, Sam Ashburner won J15 single and Dave Jones got silver in J16 single. This is when singles were still at national schools. And then, GB France slot. And then off the back of that, the following year, I was then back in Maidenhead. So I started coaching those two plus another two lads. That kind of, then we sort of had a little group, all very young. And the other two lads both made the single of J15 final. So again, really good standard. And then that year's J16s, Dave and Sam both made it into the coupe team out in Ravenna or 2004. Yeah. And then the following year, what was it, 2005? What happened in 2005? Oh no, Dorney. It was when the coupe was in Dorney.
Yeah.
And then we just had like a really good little group. So it was a little group. But just very successful. And as a consequence, everyone kind of turned up, got stuck in every night. And then the following year, Phil Clapp came into that. So Phil Clapp was at Clare's Court. And then I had just a good little sculling group. And so he came and joined that sculling group. To begin with, he was still rowing on the Clare's Court. And then in the end, started rowing on the Maidenhead. And then Cole Delaney, do you remember Cole Delaney? So he came into that as well. So it was just a great little group, great little atmosphere and environment, and very successful for those few years.
So you were just kind of attracting people were like seeing it successful or enjoyable. And
I don't know what it was. I think obviously, we'd had some successes, and with Dave and Sam being so successful at such young ages and still having a few years. So, you know what I mean? Like they were J16s, both made the national team, and then had 2 more years. So it's quite then, people then want to come to it. But the only person, well, obviously we had Carl come over from Wallingford, but that wasn't for very long. I think that was only a part of his last year because he was with Tony over at Wallingford. And then, Phil started with us as a J15, and he was already 6'9" or something like that as a J15.
Wow.
Yeah. And then he, as a J16, so then at spring trials in J16, the Munich quad was Carl Delaney, Dave Jones, and up until the very last race of the spring trials was Phil Clapp as well. So it's like 3 from Maidenhead were in it, and then Phil I think he lost the seat race to Steve-O or someone, I can't remember. And then I was like, okay, this will be my first opportunity to coach. And then they brought in Tim Foster to coach it. And I was like, I can't even argue with that one. But then I got to work with Tim, and it was amazing. It was like a footballer getting to like coach with David Beckham. It was, somebody I'd obsessed over, like watched him so much to see what he was doing. And then there was little things like, there was really geeky rowing things. And I was just kind of had to ask these. I didn't have to, but I did ask these stupid questions. So in 8 Burlet in 2007, that was just after Princess died. And on the medal pontoon, I realised, this is such a stupid thing. So all of them had their World Championship all-in-ones, and it said like 8 Burlet, 997, blah, blah, blah. But he didn't. He just had a World Championship all-in-one with just the GB flag on it. And so I said, why was that?
Did he know?
He did. He said, "Oh yeah, it was the wrong size all-in-one, so I got given a spare all-in-one." It was so weird that I asked him that.
I was thinking the same thing. So because he did a postgrad at Keble College, he was coaching at Keble College, and he's friends with one of the guys who's putting money in. So he used to come in for the last 5 weeks. So he'd come on our Easter training camp and then coach the men's 8 and first. So for 2 or 3 years, I sort of got to work with Tim Foster, which was wild. And then when I became the director of rowing, but he was still involved. Yeah. And like sit down at the start of term and Tim's just like, however I can help you, you're in charge. It's like, am I leading a coaching team which involves Tim? Like, what the hell is going on? But it gave me so much confidence, I guess, in a lot of imposter syndrome. But to hear, like he would say, "Oh, what do you think about this?" and sort of give my opinion. He's like, "Yeah, that's how I do it."
Yeah.
Oh, wow! Like I'm not faking this.
Yeah. And then he'd come out with some great little. Because obviously, I don't know. He said his job at that point was he worked for like the Olympic Association or something, and he travelled the world looking at how different countries and different sports trained, which sounds like the most amazing job you could ever have. So he had like different things that the Danish were doing and different, so he kind of bought these different training ideas, which was great and really interesting to listen to. So he got to coach with him for a couple of months, and then they didn't send a quad to the World Champs that year. Carl Delaney got glandular fever. Dave Jones got unexplained overtraining or whatever it is, unexplained underperformance syndrome. He kind of, I think he made the Coupe team, but then I think he was the spare, or I can't remember exactly how it worked out, but he didn't end up doing it. And so then that summer I coached Phil Clapp in the single at Coupe, and also because he was only a J16, they gave him the GB France slot. So it was great. Like he won the time trial at the beginning of final trials, and Thrust was just like, right, it's GB France this weekend. Do you want to go? We were just like, sweet. So packed our bags and went off to that, and then did the Coupe a few weeks later in wherever it was. Can't remember now. Vichy, I think. Nice. Yeah.
Did you have anyone come up and be like, this kid is not 16? Like, no way.
That reminds me of 2009 in the under 23. I was in the men's 8, and then we saw the Polish men's 8. I was like, they all look 40. I'm sorry. Is this definitely under 23?
It's funny. Like my neighbor was stroking that 8, and he's the guy who ultimately like got me into rowing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then Tom raced him in 2009.
Yeah,
I'd also previously would credit Davy Jones with one of the reasons why we turned it around and beat the Tideway Scullers in that Thames Cup race, because he refused to like drink or eat anything in Spain because he thought he was going to get ill.
Oh yeah,
and then just wasn't drinking enough. The first 2 days got like heat stroke, then had to take a couple of days out of the boat.
Oh yeah.
We didn't have any other spares.
Yeah.
So Ben Lewis comes and sit in the bow seat, and I was at 2.
Yeah.
And then Ben Lewis just tears me a new one for like 2 days. Like, do you think that's a catch? No, I'm not even kidding. Like, we've spoken about this before, but we'd be at the top end of Banyolas and just me rowing in donuts. Everyone in the 8 doing nothing, and just Ben being like, get your blade in.
Yeah.
Now. And like, it made a big, obviously, it had a huge impact.
Yeah.
Davey jumped back. Just in general, like having Ben sit in the boat and just pull out a few things. We just lost to Scullers at, what was it? Not Marno, what was the other one? Met Regatta. So we were like, had the bit between our teeth, and in a weird way. Davey getting ill was
this is the fun thing about coaching though. Like, you can see certain things, but until you sit in a boat, like there's also like so much that you can gain out of like feeling it. I was like, we're actually the timing of this boat, or like the balance, or like you see certain things that like you cannot see from outside the boat. It
is weird. Like even now, if I hop in a boat,
I was going to say,
usually there'll be things I'm working on the bank that I'll just be like, forget about that. And you'll just feel completely different things.
Will you still jump in then? It's just like...
more now, like 5 years ago when I was 17 stone, Tom. Probably not so much. Yeah. But nowadays I do jump in from time to time. And I actually quite like it. But I generally will pick up on different things and stuff like that. I always just like it with, do you know Felipe Salbani? Or Sabani. So he coached Matt Langridge in 2001, and he now works with Sean Bowden over at Oxford. I think he still does anyway. And so he was in 2001. He was there, and I remember Emilio, my pairs partner, being sat at lunch, and he was like, "So what makes you such a good coach?" And he was like, "I know it sounds really weird, but I can feel when the boat's going well." And I thought that was a really weird answer. And then since I got into coaching, it's like, there's a lot in that. But then, we're talking about something completely different. But I think as far as the feel of a boat going well, there's, as a coach, you suddenly have that like that moment. You're just like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, Ben Lewis said, like, but 8s and boats, like, either move or they don't. Like, when it comes to, like, Marlow and Wallingford, like, you can tell if a crew's going to be, like, a ladies' plate contender. But just, like, looking at it goes, like, you're not going to find, like, magic in the last, like, 5 weeks or something. If you've had all year to do it.
On that, really.
You definitely can, but
if not, I've got nothing.
Yeah, I think it's everything else can be a distraction when you actually focus on is it are we going fast?
Yeah.
Like,
Isn't that weird though?
Look pretty, or you might not be exactly rowing the way. Like Ben Welburn was sort of talking about coaching what's in front of you, like because people were saying at Hereford, oh yeah, you've got this thing you do, you're quite upright, aren't you? He's like, I'm not trying to be. It's just I've got athletes with limited flexibility. Yeah. So I'm just kind of working with what I've got.
Yeah.
And then that's almost like people have been like, oh, you're doing it different. He's like, no, I'm just kind of getting the best out what's in front of me.
Yeah. No, it is weird. But
because then you also have a lot of coaches who are like, they know how GB decided you want to row, and they're just kind of, they're not reacting to anything that's going on. They're like, you should be doing this, and this.
But it's weird. I think a lot of people are like that.
Yeah.
And it was only really, so I was taught, and for like 20 years of rowing, did like fast spin the hands, let it run over the toes, which is what everyone, that's what you did.
Yeah.
And then I watched that Drew Gin pod, the talk, will it make the boat go fast? Have you seen that?
Yeah.
I watched that.
Oh yeah.
And I was just like, thought nothing of it. And then we went on a training camp to Longridge. So we used to do Clares Court training camp at Longridge, which is like 5 miles away.
Yeah.
But it was because we could do it residential. So, if people were, there would always be reasons why people couldn't get to training through the holidays. So we put a residential camp on like 5 miles from where we rowed. But I remember beginning one of those camps, we were like, let's just try it. And then if it doesn't work, we're where we are now. If it works, then we might have found something. And we tried it through that camp, and that all went well. And kind of since then, since then I've completely changed again, like my coaching. But it was that thing that suddenly I questioned what I'd always thought was that's just how you do it. And then suddenly you kind of think, oh, so what does make the boat go faster? Yeah. And then it's kind of, and then you start kind of actually thinking for yourself, which I hadn't done probably before. I was like, well, this is what you got to do. Yeah. Spin the hands, let it run over the toes. And it's kind of like, you got to sit here at this rate and do that. And all. Yeah, it's kind of, there was lots of things that I'd never really sort of questioned, that suddenly you're like, oh, well, maybe that's not right.
Yeah. And it starts to get into sort of like biomechanics and the hydrodynamics and those kind of things.
Yeah.
And like the actuals. My dad's always been sort of quite mechanical scientific, and always like I remember telling him, oh, we got a fast time, this and that or something, or whoever's coming over to Henley has just Princeton have just posted an insane time.
Yeah.
But it's really hot water over there.
Yeah.
And he was like, what do you mean it's really hot water? And I was like, well, yeah, I don't actually know how to explain it, but apparently everyone goes faster in hot water.
Yeah.
And he kind of sort of sat down and worked it out. It was like, oh, okay, yeah, no, that makes sense.
Oh, really?
I was like, oh shit, there's actually, well, obviously there is something to it.
Well, yeah, I think
those things you get told and you're
okay. You just don't question it.
Yeah.
I think molecules move faster at like higher heat.
Let's go with that.
Yeah.
Molecules.
Are you on camera? Are you willing? Are you going to hang your hat on this? Do you actually know?
Not a scientist, but this is bro science.
Oh right, yeah. Don't worry, neither are we. Well, I don't know. You might be, but I'm not.
No, absolutely not. No. Why do you think I became a rower?
Row science. Yeah, that's what we're going to stick with.
So then, so I guess through Maidenhead, like you said, this is the kind of time where you're starting to question stuff, actually think about what you're doing.
Well, Maidenhead probably didn't. No, Maidenhead was probably the whole time I was at Maidenhead. It was probably just quite. So like Derek, the chap who coached me, he was quite a taskmaster. What would be considered. Everyone still like refers to as old school, but even when it was considered old school, people are still doing it now. It was just like we did a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
We used to do 6 1500s like twice a week, like flat out. And he would have times and books for years and years and years of like, right, we have to hit this speed if we want to do this. I mean, it was great. But as a consequence, we were nails, like this little crew of just 4 pals that were just rinsing up and down every single day. And then I remember in the summer holidays, he said, if you can do 50 miles in a single in a day, you can come and use. He had this amazing snooker room at his house, like the most phenomenal house you've ever seen. And he would say, if you do 50 miles in a day, you can come and play snooker on my snooker table. we were like, sweet, like that was it, that we were going to try and do it. And none of us did. I mean, 50 miles is so far in a single when we were like 14 years old.
That's 80k.
Yeah, loads. Yeah.
Wow.
That's nuts.
I think my pal got quite close. He did like 60, 70k. I mean, he's still like balmy, but that was in the summer holidays, well, not even in the middle of the season. And then since then, I got invited over. He did like a Christmas party. He used to do a Christmas party every year, like a snooker party. I remember the first time I got invited, it was how much of a privilege it was to play snooker on this table. Why did I even start talking about that? What we used to do. Yeah. So he used to be like a real taskmaster, and we used to do loads of hard work. And then I kind of took that into what I was doing at Maidenhead. And then you kind of pinch things from what people are doing. I remember everyone used to talk about Brooks used to do 20-20-20. And I was like, sweet, well, we'll do that. So we used to do a 20-minute ergo, a 5K run, the most horrific session ever. So that was what Jack Beaumont used to do. And I
like that session. They still do it now, but it was just initially just born out of like, we don't have enough ergs.
Oh, right. Well, I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah. We just split into 3 groups.
Yeah.
And then ride it.
So they do 20 minutes.
I think so. Well, it used to be 20-minute erg, 20-minute run, 20-minute erg.
Yeah, I think they still do that.
Right.
Or, I mean, I don't know. They've got the bikes now, so maybe they'll do like erg run bike.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just a way of getting everyone on the ergs.
Yeah.
It's now become quite an infamous.
And as a coach, I was like, right, I mean, if somebody told me to do that now, I'd just be like, no, it'd be horrific. But yeah, so we used to have 20-minute, it would be 10-minute between the end of the erg and the start of the run. And then it would be 10 minutes between the last person arriving back and the start of the next erg. And the second erg, they had to be within 150 meters of their first erg. I don't know why. That was just like a thing. But yeah, I mean, we just do that all the time. It was horrific, absolutely horrific. But as a consequence, we just had these lads that were just really tough lads. So, we basically used to row in quite a kind of what would probably now be considered quite an old-fashioned style. But there's still lots of crews. And I'm starting to kind of go back that way again. Sort of spinning the hands, they run over the toes. Mm-hmm. Doing that. But we had quite a successful little group there. So like, obviously Dave and Sam did very well in those years. And we had Phil Clapp, Carl Delaney, Max Gerard. And then I went traveling. So I wanted to kind of, like loads of of my pals went traveling. My cousin, the one who got me into rowing, who's kind of like my idol, he went traveling for a few years. I always wanted to do it, but I also didn't want to just do traveling for the sake of traveling. Mm-hmm. So in 2006, I got a job working for New Wave at the World Champs when it was at Dorney.
Cool. Nice.
And when coaches, so I got the job in the athlete area, and whenever any coach came up with like a New Zealand or an Australian badge, I would always say, because it was about a week before I flew out and started traveling, I'd always say, I'm going to be out over this period. Would you mind if I came and jumped in with you and whatever, And then a lady who got me the job, Karen Phillips from Maidenhead Rowing Club, she knew all these people, and she kind of ended up introducing me to all of them. So I got introduced to Noel Donaldson. I didn't know who Noel Donaldson was. And he was the head of Australian rowing, so I kind of thought he must be quite a big deal. And I said, I'm going to be out. And he said, well, we've got a camp in December, why don't you just come on that? And I was just like, okay. I mean, nothing that would ever happen. I don't know whether it would still happen there nowadays, but it certainly wouldn't happen here nowadays. So I went to Canberra for 2 weeks in December and just went on this camp. And I jumped in with loads of different coaches. Nick, what was the name of that really good stunning? They had a really good stunning coach, Nick Garrett. Jumped in with him, jumped with loads of different people, and just sat there just talking. And then I was in a launch with Noel doing timing when they were doing this like pairs matrix or doubles matrix for a few days, just chatting away and all the rest of it. And then we got to the end of it and he said, we're having a barbecue at an end of camp barbecue at mine if you want to come over. And went there and there was like all these, like my Aiken, like all these different coaches. I was just like, this is weird. And then walked in and on the wall, there was a picture of the Awesome Foursome with Noel on their shoulders. I was just like, it's the Awesome Foursome. He was like, that's a crew I used to coach. I was like, I've been stuck with this bloke for 2 weeks. So I had no idea. Wow. The Awesome Foursome.
So you were doing you were like coaching on that camp?
I wasn't coaching. I was just helping him with timing.
Yeah.
Just shadowing other coaches, just listening to them. The Ashes was on, so I'd keep him up to date on what was going on with that, although we lost quite heavily, so I wasn't talking about it too much. And then, so that was the second part of my trip. So the first part, I went to New Zealand, and I went to West End Rowing Club in Auckland, and shadowed a chap called, was it John White? No, what's the name of the boat? He was basically the chap who first coached Mahi Drysdale. So shadowed him at West End. And then I went from there down to Cambridge and shadowed Dick Tonks, and like just stayed at it's all been developed now, but there used to be like a dorm there that you could stay on site. And I remember I turned up and it was pitch black, walked into this dorm, freezing cold, turned the light on, and the whole room was just full of people, because it was also where there was close by, there was fruit picking. So all of the fruit pickers stayed in the dorm, and I turned up at like 7 p.m. And obviously they work from like 4 a.m. So they were all in bed and I turned the light on, like trying to lay my stuff out. So yeah, spent like a week there and jumped in with a load of coaches. And then that was the last person I coached I shadowed in New Zealand, then went over to Australia after a bit more traveling around New Zealand. Shadowed, maybe that was John White from Sydney Rowing Club. And then I went up to Brisbane, and one of my old coaches, a chap called Mark Partridge, was at Nudgee College up there. So jumped in with him for a few sessions. A chap called Joe Rodriguez at University of Queensland. Who else did I jump in with up there? A few other coaches around that neck of the woods. Then I went down to Canberra, went in there, tried to set up a few things. I just basically would call ahead. Not one person said no. Literally everyone was just like, yeah, come on down. I mean, it was amazing. It was so good. And actually, I basically had like... I had a notebook, and I would ask, like, I had set questions I would kind of ask each coach, and I'd always, because there were certain things I was interested in, because when I first started coaching, I was really young. So I always struggled to I was always a very similar sort of age to the people I was coaching. So that's really weird to kind of keep that sort of coach-athlete sort of separation, because, you talk about the same sort of stuff that they do and, and all the rest of it. So I was always interested in that thing, and I would always like do an overriding, like what was their style of coaching, blah, blah, blah. Oh, and I coached I shadowed Andy Randall as well, who's obviously now the women's coach here. And he was so good, like really, really interesting, and just a really nice aura with him. And I remember I went to a session with him at King's School Parramatta. Don't know if you remember, like 2006, they came over and won Henley.
Do you remember that erg score average?
No.
It was like sub 610 or something.
I was
that Parramatta. That was a crew of my school.
Oh, really?
Guy. He showed us. We had this print out, and we had like all of their names, and it's like it was insane.
Yeah,
like six that crew. Like
oh, really?
610 or something. It was savage.
But one of the things that I learned when shadowing him was like just the simplicity of it. So I turned up once. I only shadowed him for like 2 or 3 sessions, 1 or 2 at Parramatta and then 1 at Sydney Uni, because he was sort of regional coach at that point. But the session at Parramatta was 14K rate 24 piece. And so I turned up there, no one was there. The bus turned up with the boys. They got off, went into the changing rooms, got changed, or maybe they were changed and dumped their bag. This was early morning. They went into the boathouse. Boathouse had 3 boats to a rack, and then it had a few racks with just riggers on, with quick release riggers. So the boys would grab a boat, grab a rigger, they'd put the rigger on the water, and they pushed off like, I don't know, it felt like 30, 40 scullers, just pushed them off onto the water. And I was like, oh, that's different, It was just a really practical way of making it work. And then they had a start order from the finish order from the previous week. They had 30-second gaps between everybody. Nobody had rate meters, but the coaches basically just took rates and they would shout it out and blah, blah, blah. They rowed up 7K, round a bridge, back 7K. The finish line was literally like 100 meters from the boathouse. So they then came in. So the whole session would have taken them like an hour and 5 minutes, something like that. Came in while they were on the water. Some parents had turned up and got breakfast ready. They got off the water, put their boat away, rigger away, went and got changed, came out, had breakfast. The bus turned up. They got on the bus and they drove back to school. And I was just like, that's the most amazing use of time. Sounds
like every coach's dream.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that never happens. But then
sat there going like, ooh, yes.
But then he said like, every week something will go wrong.
Yeah.
And there was a lad whose foot stretcher had come off, and when it came off, they kind of just took note of the time, fixed it, took note of the time again, set him off again, and over 14K. He was like, every week something will happen, but we do it every week, and there'll be patterns, and the same people will turn and would come out on top. And generally, we pretty much select the top 8, the second 8 off this, or it almost always works out that way. I was just like, such a simple session and such good use of the time that you've got. So that was really interesting. And then, so then off the back of that, I then came back. So that was 06, 07 season. So I came back in like January, February of 07. No, I can't remember. 07. And started coaching Phil again. So I kind of kept coaching him remotely, and my old coach Derek had been doing some work with him. I sort of basically organised his training, and he was really good. He kind of didn't go and join another club or anything, just kept with that. Richard Bolton came down and did quite a lot of work with him because he was the juniors coach at the time. And then I came back in the early February, went to the February trial. And then, he had a really good year, and then got into the quad that then came 6th in the final. But they got a banjo with about 250 to go. So that was him, Drew Ford, Chris Clark, and John Preston. Prescott. Yeah. So that was 4 of them. And then the following year, Phil, obviously, that was when his back went back.
Exploded.
Yeah, man. That was, But it was a weird one because him being so tall, so young, we kind of knew that he needed to take his time with it. So he had loads of conditioning work over at Bissam, which is not really kind of very normal for a junior to get. And the physios, because he had no signs of like any disc issues. So they were like, he's fine, no numbness, no pins and needles, nothing like that. He's fine. And then, in fact, it was Matt Tarrant was talking about it. He said in the ergo next to him.
Was it a non-camp? Where
no, it was in Nottingham.
It was Nottingham. Yeah.
And Phil got to the end of it, and they were, there was a physio on the camp, and they were saying, he's got no signs. It's probably just a bit of like a pulled muscle or something like that. He got to the end of that ergo. Well, I don't even know if he got to the end of it. It was in agony. And so he'd had a scan by that point, but had been told he was, still good to train. And then the physio called up and got the results from the scan, and obviously it was just like, it's not good. So then he kind of went into a rehab program, and then he didn't really kind of pick it up again until uni after that. And then obviously he won national indoors at the weekend.
Just now.
Yeah. So he's doing all right. Phenomenal.
He's doing a lot of erg stuff. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah. Which is actually kind of the sprint stuff, I think, is something that the sport needs to. It's quite exciting. And yet, as a sport, we're quite traditional with what we want to do. And I think what he's doing with that is great.
Yeah, we saw him at London Rowing Club last year. We were talking about all that sort of stuff. There's some interesting things. We were talking about ergs and getting into the real specifics of stuff. So
Interesting
way to take it.
Talked about like finding a 1% because like at those sprints at that sort of level, like they all matter. So if you can like find 2 or 3 1% that you can improve over the course of a year or something, like that could be the difference between having a current world record and coming third.
Yeah. No, he's but I was like, that would be like 500 meter erg. That would be one for like the Arnold Classic or something. You know what I mean? Like it would be a really different way. But wouldn't that be amazing?
Yeah.
Like
I'd love
braking left, right, and centre. You guys would be made up. Just being pushed for by you.
Definitely going to get. I said to Welsh Rowing for the indoors. I was like, we'll come and do.
Oh yeah.
Just in case anything breaks.
Yeah. But that would be it's kind of weird that we have so many other sports have different distances. So, obviously we've got the difference between 2,000 and 1,500 at the next Olympics, but it's kind of, not that different. But to have like like in canoeing at the Olympics or kayaking, whatever it is, they have like a sprint and like middle distance stuff. It's really different to what we've had in the past, but it would be really interesting to have that sort of thing. They tried to do it with the super sprints. Remember super sprints?
Yeah. That was like sponsored by Jaguar, wasn't it? It was like Redgrave and Jaguar, and there was money, there was prize money.
Yeah. And it was a shame that never really kind of got going. But it would be, it's going to be like rowing now. It's not going to be a big money spinner.
Yeah.
But it would be a really good little thing for the sport to have.
Yeah, even if you just had a few regattas where I don't know, for example, in autumn time, all the juniors would come in and like do a 1K at Dorney.
Yeah.
And then like they would double up or triple up in different disciplines. Like we have that kind of thing in Poland.
Yeah.
Where you sometimes have races where you race, your 2K rivals on a 500 meter distance. It's like, it is quite fun.
Yeah.
Home countries now.
Oh, do they?
Everyone does 2K, and then the big boats, the 8 and the
Oh, yeah, of course they do. Yeah. I remember.
Sprint, which is quite fun. And obviously, different people tend to win those.
But you could have like a sprint day. You mean like if you had everyone, you've done the 2000 regatta. So now in one day, you're going to have, the same amount of rounds. It's 500 meters. Just keep it basic so you don't have to put a different marker in. 500 meters and you just get through the lot. And that would be, I think it would be really good. And it wouldn't really cost anything different for the sport. It would just be a completely different sort of avenue for it to kind of, I don't know, maybe one day.
Are you advocating for a 4-day nut school?
500 sprint race.
Sounds good. Like a sprint season could happen. Off the back of Henley.
It'd be fun. There's a lot of people talking about trying to get a bit more fun back into rowing. It's very serious from a very young age. A lot of kids like 16, like full 4 down the line. But it'd be nice to have something a bit more fun.
Maybe one day.
But anyone listening, fancies putting it together.
Also, like even like on the indoor stuff, like for example, like regattas is what we call them in Poland. Like they're quite a big thing. You have like probably 5 or 6 a year.
Really?
You all go and attend to.
But
like in here, like I don't know how many people go to the indoors. It's not like a national trial sort of thing. Where you see everyone.
National team used to go. Sometimes, and it's picked up a lot recent because of CrossFit.
Right.
That's what I was going to say. Like I think hopefully like the indoor staff can maybe lead the way on like the sprints and like all these other events. Like a 200 meter flat out. Like what split can you hold out? Like that sort of thing. Like I think.
But it is, and it's I guess on the indoors it's a lot easier to do those different things as well.
Yeah.
But I remember the national team used to have like Colin Greenway. I remember him with his ponytail on the front of like Concept 2 record catalogue or like magazine or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I remember there was a picture of Greg Searle in an all-in-one. I don't know if he's still got the all-in-one. It was just like a Union Jack. The whole all-in-one was a Union Jack. It's so cool.
I'm pretty sure I had a paper cut out from, I think it's from the newspaper. It would have been 05, 06 or something like that. And it was an article from Indoor Rowing Championships.
Yeah.
And it was like something like 13 British athletes go under 6.
Oh, right. Oh, really?
Like, at that time, like you would not even the whole squad was going.
Yeah. No, I know. Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
And then Shep's now got like 30 sub-6s to pick from.
Yeah.
So that's weird. That's gone
It's crazy how
funny
it goes
direction.
I think even like some senior teams like outside of Britain, like
that senior team.
Yeah, like
still now.
Even now, like not everyone's
Washington's
sub-6.
got like 3/8 worth of sub-6 minutes or something. I mean, like,
that's crazy. I don't think the entire Polish team is under 6.
Oh,
or if they are, then like not a lot of them are under 550. There'll be only like a very select few people.
I don't think the 2008 were all sub-6. I think I remember hearing
really
Trapmore was, well, I don't know, he might say otherwise, but Steve Trapmore, I think Andrew Lindsay was another guy at Bow. I don't know whether they were sub-6, and that crew obviously went,
it's not everything.
What will make the boat go faster?
How much of it you apply? Who was it the other day who was saying like you can have a 5:45 but you're only applying 6:10, or you can have a 6 minute and apply all of it.
Or you're putting down a 5:45 and then releasing a 6:30.
No, I think that was Aldridge.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
So then, I guess coming like towards Maidenhead, like the decision to move to Clare's Court, was that an opportunity to be in charge?
Well, there's one more thing that I wanted to touch on at Maidenhead, and that was a young, freshly faced chap called Jack Beaumont. Right? I wanted to talk about like how he started rowing, and also like he trialed, I think, for the 4-league quad, like when he was like either 12 or 14.
Yeah. So he was rowing. So his dad used to row at Maidenhead, and then Jack started rowing there from a really young age. And then I think I started coaching him beginning of, it was either end of J14 or, it must have been end of J14, beginning of J15. And he just used to be, like everyone, I remember him doing an ergo, just going off like a bat out of hell. I was like, just chill. But still pulling like a ridiculous score for a J14. And then it would have been the end of J14, And then J15, he kind of came into the group. So who would we have had in the group at that time? He was a really good it was just a great little squad. So that was kind of a squad that sort of built up after. So I started working with a chap called John Troswell, who was running a group down there, and then I helped him along with that. And then, so we had that
was about 2000.
So yeah, Rob Ashburner was in that, Jack Beaumont, Ayrton Hasnay was in it for a year. Yeah.
I did N23s with him as well.
Oh, you did? Oh, right.
2010 in Belarus.
Right. Was that in the 4?
The Cox 4.
Yeah. It was a really good little group there. And Jack was one of them. That was the 2020 era. Like, it was very kind of old school training, but yeah, they were very successful. We won Schools Head, National Junior Sculling. We were at that point, we were very much the group that would do well at the Schools Head, and then kind of would sort of stay that speed when everyone else sort of picked up speed. So he went through trials with us at that time. As a J15, I think he made it into either our second boat or our top boat.
Yeah, like Foley. I think.
Yeah,
he might have mentioned that. Like, you called him out, like not even like that long before.
Yeah, we were doing seat racing, and I was just like, "Do you fancy coming down?" Because I think he pulled, like, as a J15, I think he still pulled like a sub 630.
Wow,
like something massive. So he came and then did some seat racing with us. I think he was in the second boat, and then did very well. And then J16. It was a very good year again, and he went to, so that would have been 2010, I think. So that was when the World Champs was in Ravenna. Not Ravenna. What's the one in near Prague? Rechica, yeah. So he was in the quad for that year, which I coached at the World Champs as well, and came fourth. And then the following year, 2011, he was in the quad again. At London, at Dorney. It was just great little time. We had another really good group. So we had Rob Ashburner, Jack Beaumont. There's another lad called Tom Hope. Do you remember Tom Hope?
I think I might have like crossed paths with him.
Right. So he won. He was 5'9", 62 kilos on one champ single at national schools. Like,
whoa,
unreal! Like, genuinely the best race I've ever watched. And so it's him, Angus Groom. Williams from Sideways Scullers as well. There was like a really good group in the final, and it was like, so Jack and Rob Ashburner in the double in the race after, 2 races after. So Tom went off in the single that race, and we just said, like, just stick in the field, and then it got to like 1,000, and him and Angus sort of like started moving away. And then he just stuck with Angus, and then like 250 to go, just started kind of creeping, and then came through in the last little bit. But phenomenal run. And obviously Angus has done pretty well since then. But yeah, that was amazing. Like, really, really cool, because he's just such an amazing bloke, Tom. Just such a nice chap. So for him to do that, we were kind of doing cartwheels, was brilliant.
Yeah. Well, Jack said, just even about that era of coaching, he said, like, you basically taught all of them how to just perfectly nail themselves on the ergo, leave everything out in the training, and then just get like really fast, like find your limits and everything. Yeah,
it wasn't very scientific, but it was just hard training. It was kind of what I'd done, so it was just kind of doing that again.
But there's a science.
I guess there is. Yeah.
And then ultimately that you guys have won Forley in 2012.
Not 2012. So then he, so that was kind of when, so 2012, I then took on Claire's court, and then that was when he went with Borlays. He won Henley in 2012 with Borlays.
Oh, my mistake.
So yes, Phil Clapp won Henley with Henley Rowing Club, in fact, Chris Clark, Drew Ford, and Alex Walker in 2007. And that was that was the first kind of Henley win that I'd been involved with. And then so he won in 2012 with Borlays.
Yeah, starting his 9-year winning streak.
Yeah.
Like madness.
Was Robin Dow was coaching him?
2012 it would have been Robin. Yeah. So I think that might have been Robin's first win as well, maybe. Probably, yeah. Yeah,
because then Robin won again in 2014 and 2015.
Yes. Yeah. That was right. So he had 1 year off.
had.
I know. I raised that. Yeah,
they nearly won in 2013 as well, didn't they?
Oh,
I think there was like a J16 crew pretty much in the final.
Yeah, and didn't the ball like the whole ball A squad went on and then won
everything,
junior world. yeah, everything.
Yeah, it was crazy. Like they were pretty untouchable in that 2014-2015 season.
Well, yeah, what he was doing was amazing. And actually, he was a big help to me kind of later on as well. I had a meeting with him when he became junior head coach. And I was just like, right, I'll buy you a coffee. And then I sat him down. I was like, right, so how are they going so fast? And he was brilliant. He was just like an open book and just told me everything. And I just made notes and just kept on making notes, and a lot of which I still use now. So, yeah, I held a lot to him. He was great. And a really good pal of mine as well. So it was very sad, obviously, once we heard the news.
I rode with him at Leander for a little bit, and I remember I sat next to him on the plane to Banyola's camp once. He's like, man, he's had a serious life. He'd done like so much other stuff.
Yeah.
He's telling me about when he was like working at Wimbledon and all sorts. But then I remember we were talking about back problems, because that's probably the first year I've had some back problems, and he'd had an issue, and he'd rehabbed at Welsh Institute of Sport.
Right.
And he said he was talking to the doctor, and the doctor's like, well, what are our aims? So I think he'd had an injection and he was taking it slow. And he's like, I just want to get back to like an acceptable daily level of back pain. And the doctor was like, Robin, the acceptable level of back pain on a daily basis is no back pain. And he was like, oh yeah.
And athlete minds.
Yeah, but I mean, that stuck with me as well for a long time, because, same thing. We just say, as long as it doesn't hurt too bad. And then it happened to be like, no, that's not a good long-term plan.
Yeah. No, he was phenomenal.
Amazing.
So that explains the speed in 2016 which Claire's Court had, but we'll get to that in a minute.
So I guess so moving on to Claire's Court, like, was that the opportunity to kind of take things on?
I basically started coaching there 2007, just part-time.
Yeah.
And I did that alongside coaching at Maidenhead, really. But I wasn't in charge. I was just kind of like a session coach, would probably be called.
I think that's the best kind of coaching. Isn't it? No responsibility. Just get to turn up and do the fun bit.
Yeah. Turn up, see what's in front of you. All right, goodbye. None of
Because I had actually been a gappy there like years previous.
What's a gappy?
Like a gap year coach.
Oh,
I did a year there, or maybe not even a whole year. It might have been 2 terms there. Previously. So I didn't know the place. Obviously, they were out of Maidenhead. Have done it since they first started, really. So yeah, January 2012, I started as head of rowing there, and it was kind of there was me and Chris Clark was coaching there as well, and we kind of sort of thought there was a pathway through for it to be successful. So we then kind of took it on, and we thought, everyone wants to be, I don't know if you remember, Alex Henshelwood took on a few different places. Yeah. He took on Pangbourne. I remember he took it on in like the September, and then they won Henley in the July. And he was like, oh yeah, well, that must be doable. But then at Claire's Court, there was just, beyond year 10, there was barely anybody rowing. It was kind of like year 9. They started in year 7, so year 7, 8, 9, 10. And then kind of by the time they got to the later years, it either done it for too long or it just kind of didn't really kind of exist beyond sort of year 11-ish. Or year 10, really. So then we started with a great group in the year 9 of whatever that would have been, 2012. They might have even been year 9 in 2011. So kind of, I think I knew that I was taking over ahead of time. So we sort of started with that year 9 group, and then we had year 9 and 10, and then year 9, 10, 11. And we just let it kind of fill the club. So trickle up the club, and the boat club then kind of got bigger and bigger year on year. And it was quite weird because kind of taking it on, we said it's completely open to everybody, but if you're coming down, you're doing the training which is on that day. Which meant to begin with, it wasn't very popular because we kind of, or within the school, because we lost people, because you had people that wanted to come to rowing because they got to go and buy sweets at the shop, or you got people that wanted to just go and do their own thing on the water. And we're like, everyone is welcome, but you have to do what's on the program. So we lost, it wasn't many, we lost a couple of people to begin with. So that was kind of difficult conversations to kind of have within the school, and people, and quite rightly asking questions because they didn't know what was to come, So then we then found ourselves in a situation where we were kind of recruiting the same amount of people, but we stopped losing people. So we previously had been kind of you know, it was a really good recruitment process, but there was also a decruitment process where people would kind of come in, do the sport just as kind of like to just have a go, but not really, it wouldn't really tie, you know, they wouldn't take it home with them, you know. So then in 2012, that summer, we got our first kind of national medal for a few years. So one of the coaches with us now, John Rowgear, so he was there back to when it kind of first was set up years previous. So it's not like we've come from nothing. So like in the early 90s, it was set up in 84. Every single badge has got 85 written on it because I asked John what year the boat club started, and he said, that was 1985. So, okay, sweet. So 85 on everything. And then C.D. Ritchie's, you know, from Westminster. Like, he was a chap who's been in charge of the school's head for a long time and done, like, you name it, he's done it within rowing. He happened to be at Clare School. I didn't know this. And he came over to me and he looked at my blazer and he went, you know, that's wrong. I was just like... I was too late now, age 4. So it's 85 as far as everything is concerned, but it's good little, you know, boring rowing trivia question.
Yeah, that's going to come out in the pub quiz.
Yeah, very niche pub quiz.
Oh, who was it who said that we've had 2 athletes who said they reckon, or they got recommended to have like the best rowing knowledge.
Oh yeah, so we're gonna do a panel with Lauren Henry and Imogen Grant on like the rowing knowledge.
We'll keep that. That could be like the deciding round. You know?
Yeah, when anyone gets that, I'll be really surprised.
And this is
3 people that know it. Well,
and it's like,
a few more.
well, you've had answers. You just had to listen to the episode, you know. So it's like, well, technically, talk about rewriting history.
So yeah, that was kind of set up by a chap called Peter Jowett, and then C.D. Ritchie's obviously in charge, or was involved at that time. Then John Rowgear kind of took charge early on, Mark Partridge, and they had the school didn't actually have a 6th form early on. So there was a chap called Ben Webb who was at the school until 6th form, and then there wasn't a 6th form for him to go into. So then he joined Maidenhead, and in '94 he won the Fawley with. It was Maidenhead Rowing Club and Windsorian. That was John Rowgear was coaching that. And then there was another chap who I now row with called John Gelling, who won the Fawley with Windsor Boys, with Wilkie actually in charge at at Windsor.
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah, like 2017.
No, Mark Wilkinson.
Oh,
what the win? So he won in 97, 98.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. But
20 years off.
Then it kind of was then had a bit of a it had a good era, just in different ways, really. And then 2012 we kind of took it on. They won its first national medal with J14 quads, silver and J14 quads in 2012, which was like our. But it was kind of like that was enough to get the ball rolling. Kind of like the sport was being done well, and in fact, one of the people in that boat was Alex Richardson, who was in the 2016 and then is now kind of head boys coach at the school. So it's kind of like it was quite a
big guy,
big part of the program. Yeah. And then so that was 2012, 2013, we qualified our first non-composite crew for Henley, which was it sounds like a nothing result, but it was a massive result. Kind of got the ball rolling as far as what we'd been saying about what if you do the training, this X, Y, and Z will happen. And then obviously people have been to Henley. I think we had another crew trying to qualify that didn't qualify. But, you know, then that kind of Henley obsession starts within the boat club.
That's exactly what Ben Welburn spoke about when he moved to Hereford Cathedral School. He asked kids like, what does Hereford Cathedral rowing mean to you? And he's like, oh well, we have fun but we lose. And then he was like, he kind of got hold of these 4 guys who thought could do something really special. So he just invested everything in them, gave everyone else, all the other coaches, spent a year. I think they won Nat Schools, and then went on and did some good stuff at Henley.
Yeah.
And that was the catalyst for everyone else to be like, oh, we can do this.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really interesting.
Yeah.
So like you said, oh, it's like a non-thing.
Yeah.
But like in the school, it's just enough to light the fire.
Yeah.
To then build year after
year.
And
also, it's a weird one though, because people, especially being in Maidenhead, like Henley's on our doorstep. So people people go there from all over the world. It's like a massive deal. And yet it's, for some people within the school who don't know rowing, it will be like the equivalent of us going to, some of the small little local regatta.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was kind of enough to get the ball rolling. And then had a few other national medals at the end of that year. which again was just kept the momentum building. And then 2013, 2014 qualified again, 2015 qualified, did a round. We had Johnny Cameron, who's now with Brooks. Jono?
Yeah. I've raced against him. He's been all over.
Yeah. So he's
been to Princeton.
He was at Boston.
Oh, was it Boston?
Yeah.
He also went to Leander for a bit. He was at Nottingham for a bit.
And then now he's at Brooks.
So
he he got selected for the coupe team. So that was like our first international like individual. We'd had kind of GB France and Anglo-French and stuff.
That was in Hungary, wasn't it? 2015.
Yeah, it was. What was the name of it?
Szeged.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, Szeged we called it. Was that wrong?
Well, I don't know. It's Hungarian. I'm not Hungarian.
Well, you know.
But I know that because I was trialing for that regatta.
Right. Really?
I came third in Poland, but they didn't pick me. So
no.
Still bitter.
Right. Yeah. So he qualified that year, and that was it was just another piece of the puzzle. But we hadn't ever got a crew into like a champ standard final. Like we'd never had a double, a single, or any. Oh no, so we had singles previously, but in that area we'd been trying to knock on the door of getting into that champ quads final.
Yeah.
And then 2016.
Yeah, so what happened? Because from going 2015 to making one round of Henley, then 4 months later, under 19 Brit champs, you guys just pipped us.
Well, pipped
us. I remember that because like in the semi-final, we were just ahead. And then in the final, I think it came down to like a second or something. That was the closest finish Leander had that year.
Oh, really?
Cool.
Yeah. Was Bally in that?
No, Bally wasn't in that crew.
So
but then
was at Claire's Court.
But then they took me out of the boat, and then we never got that close again. That's my claim to fame. But you had Bally,
Yeah. So then he didn't stay on at the school for sixth form, which is why he then went to Leander.
Yeah.
So that we just had a really good group, and I think at that point it would have been. It wouldn't have been the whole crew at that point.
You had Jono, Finley, Alex, and Costley.
And there's another lad called Ben Smith who got ill halfway through the year.
Oh, okay.
Which obviously is, very difficult for him. But he was really good, very supportive of the group. And all
Ben Smith, he does like a load of stuff on social media. He's like a gut health coach. He's living the life and stuff. I followed him for a while. Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And I was like, he's done rowing. Hang on, what year? Because he kind of looks.
So he would have been in that boat.
So he's done home countries that year as well.
He did in the 4. Yeah.
I've done my research.
So then we kind of. That was the year, actually early season, when I think it was Robin's first season as junior coach, and so I got some ideas from him. There was loads of different pieces of puzzles, different puzzles that kind of fell into place in that season. So as far as I've been coaching for 2016, so 15 years by that point, and it was just one of those years where just a lot happened in the space of 12 months, basically, as far as how we approached the season. And then we just had, timing wise, we had five boys all knocking on the door of that crew, and then so we had that win at that point. Came third or second at the Fours Head. Never won the Fours Head. Literally never won it. Always wanted to, especially when it used to be free brewery presentation afterwards and all the rest of it.
What was it? Oh, no one told me.
I've won it a couple of times because I have no sculling points.
Oh, really?
I've never won any at school. I went to Leander, and then even when I did under 23s at the time, it was still where they'd give you 12 in your discipline, but they wouldn't add any. Now they give you 12 across the board.
Oh, do they?
So every year it's like bang Tom in the bottom quad. With I think one year I did it with Jack. Like anyone who came in with like no points, you get like go and win whatever it was at the time, senior 4 or something. I always joked at the end of finishing with GB I should go and do some like novice single. Like I was thinking like Bewdley Regatta novice. But then I was like, but what if I don't win?
But people used to do that. I remember turning up for like regattas and you'd be like, hang on a minute, they were like a World Cup round last week. So we just had a very good group, and then went to the Schools Head that year, and they came and they just had a good row. nothing special. And then the result came out afterwards, and we kind of didn't expect to be where we needed to be at that point. We wanted to just be kind of there or thereabouts. And so then they won Schools Head at that time in the season. That was I was like, oh, blimey, maybe we're a bit faster than we thought. And then went on to national schools, and we changed the way we raced, changed the way we rode, kind of from maybe not changed the way we rode, but we kind of had another piece of the puzzle fell into place with this kind of technical model that we worked to that season. And then, had a successful national schools one there. And then it was kind of 5 weeks out from Henley at that point, and kind of brought the crew together a little bit more, did a few more, kind of sprinkled a bit more dust and more rest of it on it. Nothing illegal, by the way.
I'm gonna.
And then obviously it was a successful Henley campaign, which was actually, was amazing, because it was, Clarkie and I had kind of set that stall out early on. I put a bet down with the rugby coaches that we would win Henley within 4 years. And that was on a rugby tour in the September. So they took 4 years from that in the October. They took 4 years from that October. I meant 4 Henleys. So they said I hadn't succeeded.
Oh, bastards.
So that was, the 4th year. And it came together. It was like now you look back, it was like, oh yeah, sweet, it just progressed nicely, and then they ended up with a win. It's kind of like, it's not how it works at the time.
So what special sprinkle dust did you put on there? Like, what was that change?
I think a lot of us say to schoolboy rowing, like, you just won't get the athletes every year. Like, you're going to need, but that means you have to put the processes and the things in place so that when you do get the crew, everything's ready to go. You can't wait for the crew and then.
No, exactly. Yeah.
So what were some of those things do you think you maybe put in place?
I mean, it was very small boat club at that point.
Yeah.
So when we won, there was 36 people. Pretty much the whole boat club was 36 rowers.
Wow.
From J14 through to sixth form, which is actually very similar to the girls. Well, not very similar. The girls' side of the boat club, when they won in 2022, there was, I think, 9 girls in the whole boat club.
Wow.
So so it was like quite a good percentage of them on Henley.
That's amazing.
But yeah, which in some ways you think, oh, that's difficult because, we don't have the bottom of the pyramid to choose from. But then, I don't know. I think everyone's got their own challenges in different boat clubs and different setups. And I think this is kind of like, we didn't have many numbers to deal with, but that meant that, we knew that the numbers we had needed to be developed. And so it was always a process. The focus was always on development. So we had 36 people, and then within 18 months, it had basically doubled in size, kind of, sort of thing that it kind of attracts people within the school to it.
Yeah, an upward spiral.
Yeah. And then, so girls rowing had always kind of been at the school, but because it was on a slightly different timetable, the girls' site and the boys' site was a slightly different timetable. So they weren't ever able to really kind of break through, and then the timetable changed, which is why now girls rowing at the schools kind of picked up in a big way. In fact, we kind of quadrupled in size in September, just gone on the girls' side, so which is amazing. But obviously, equipment-wise, now we need to kind of pull all the equipment together for them to be able to train.
Yeah.
As far as what we did that year differently, what did we do differently? I mean, we did. We made sure that we peaked at the right time, which I don't think I'd ever really kind of thought about before. I think I just thought training was training, and you just tried to go fast all the time. Never thought about that kind of being layered and trying to actually bring together different pieces of the puzzle. I think it was one of the things that Robin actually said in that conversation I had with him. He's like, if you give them everything and then they lose, then like, how do you pick them back up? Like, so it's kind of, we only really they only get the full treatment now for Henley. Prior to that, there's always kind of something held back, whether it's a piece of kit, whether it's a training phase, whether it's whatever it might be. There's lots of different layers that we bring out kind of across the year. So we kind of possibly have now kind of got this bit of a reputation for kind of finding speed come Henley, but it's kind of like because we're trying to find speed in completely different. So it's not that we're trying to not find speed. It's just that we'll be trying to find speed through being more powerful in the gym at a certain point, which obviously is going to be more of a challenge than if you actually put together the amount of pieces that you need to put together, or whatever it might be later in the year. Or it might be that we just haven't set the boat up and they're kind of just on a very basic rig until a certain point, or it might be, I don't know, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
We kind of always have another layer.
Yeah, you keep a few tricks up in your sleeve.
Yeah, and also, and almost you have to do it at the expense of results sometimes, which is, and as long as you have to set what you're thinking is your, as long as we're within this range, we're doing all right, we're on track. Which is very kind of difficult to sometimes get people's heads around, in that you're just like, right, this is what success. I think that's the big thing. What does success look like to us at this race or this regatta or whatever it might be, and kind of working to your own criteria. And I think that's one of the big changes. I work with a sports psychologist called Alison Maitland, who is just brilliant, and she completely changed the way in which. Because I said to her, she came and basically did a careers talk on sports psychology at the school, which I went and watched just because I am interested in sports psychology. And at the end of the talk, she had a really good kind of like manner to her and very good aura. And, I thought, okay, you should be a great person. So I went, spoke to her afterwards. I was like, we've got a rowing team. Would you be interested in and be up for coming to do some work with them? And she said, well, if you're the coach, it'd probably be better if I work with you and then you work with them. And then if you feel you still need to bring me in, then I'll come in. I was like, well, that's different already, So I worked with her a lot about kind of, it was comedically bad as to, I could not get my head around what she was trying to explain to me. I don't know if you've ever seen The Simpsons when they're talking about a gas explosion to Homer. Have you ever seen this? And they have to like draw out sketches and act it out, show him like the stove. And it was kind of like, I was embarrassing how I just couldn't understand what she was saying to me. And then about 5 minutes before the end of the first hour with her, I was just like, right. It was another one of those ones where you're just kind of like lying in bed, it goes around your head. So that was she made a big impact on what we kind of, how we worked going into races. And have done since, really. She's been very, very helpful. And I've used it a load of times since then.
It sounds like one part of it being like using everything for your advantage, whatever regatta it is, like getting the most out of it that you want for it.
Yeah.
And also understanding we said with Oxford colleges and stuff, it takes a lot longer to maybe rebuild or build a structure or a way that we want to row, so that in 6 months' time, we're faster than the people who are a lot faster than us now.
Yeah.
Like, we could be fast at this regatta, we don't care about. And that a lot of other crews are doing that. Just like, how do we get instant speed? Right, leave the blaze on the water. Boom, boom, boom. They'll be faster than this now, but there's like a process to being faster than later on.
Yeah, it's basically that, nailing the process.
Yeah.
And if you do that, then it will all take care of itself.
Yeah, process driven.
So that was one of the big things we changed. But it's also quite helpful having really good athletes to work with. And there's the same things throughout all of this, You think of the people that we've talked about. There's been some great athletes through that period. It's not kind of, it's not just like, X, Y, Z. It was some very, very talented athletes that we could do different things with.
Yeah.
And that year we had just a very, very good group of boys. And then off the back of that year, we had Ollie Costley was the spare sculler for the coupe. Ollie Costley was the sculler for the coupe. Finley Gromwell was the spare sculler for the coupe. We then had Finley was also in the England 4 with Ben Smith, Jono and Alex as well. And then kind of that was like a bit of a bubble that sort of then finished at the school. And then the following year, we had Costo back. Just like we knew we had a new group to kind of come through, and being such a small setup, we knew it's not like undulating. It's kind of, we have to really work to kind of get things. So we thought the following year, if we can just get into the champ schools final again, that would have steadied the ship. It would have mean that we're still on the map and all the rest of it. And Costo did very well through trials that year. He then went on and got a silver at the Junior Worlds in the quad that year with Victor and some, the Windsor Boys lads.
Because that was the final. Like in 2017, you had a Clare's Court versus Windsor Boys final. Yeah. So like you're talking about making champ 8 final, but let alone you make Henley.
But it was completely bizarre. It was one of those ones. I never had a Henley like it, to be perfectly honest.
It was close. It was
really
really,
close.
close. I remember.
And it's kind of like, so national schools, it came fourth. And I think at the schools head that year was when it was shortened to 1,500 metres. And our boys, they kind of over the tannoy said it's now going to be from the start to the hole in the wall. Or not hole in the wall, the bandstand.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Much.
so nothing.
Yeah.
And our lads asked and said, how long is it between the start of the bandstand? And the umpire said, how long is a piece of string? And that was his answer. And
Is that at the start? Is that at the start?
That's at the start.
Do you know who's normally at the start line? It's normally Fred Smallbone.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. That would make sense.
So they went over they came at 17th and 35 seconds off of Maidenhead, who won it, over 1,500 metres. And I was like, that's like national schools champ final is going to be a tough one. But it was kind of one of those ones where you kind of like, right, do we try and dissect it or do we just write it off? And I think we were just like, don't worry about it, boys. Let's just forget about it. Got in the minibus home, went and got some KFC on the way. Just one of those ones. Yeah. Let's just write the day off and just, So then National Schools Regatta, like the biggest speech of the whole season was National Schools semi-final, because it was just like, we just got to get into that final. So, the full in the trenches speech, like everything thrown out. Boys were pumped as anything, made it into the final. Like, we just like, that's it. The season, we're there. And then in the final, went off well, and they came fourth. I think they were 9 seconds. I think it was, I can't even remember who won it. Was it Leander that won that year?
Either Leander or Windsor Boys. It was like they had a rivalry that year.
Right, okay. So
it could have been Leander.
It was either Leander, Windsor Boys, or Maidenhead. One of those three won it.
Yeah.
And I know that we were 9 seconds off. I was like, right, that's quite a short amount of time to turn around 9 seconds. I think it might have been Maidenhead. I can't remember. Anyway, so then went away, kind of just kept on trying out different lineups, trying out different things, like looking in the bag, pulling out different toys and
sometimes that's the benefit you have.
Yeah.
You're not in the lead. You've got a big chunk to make up.
Exactly.
Right?
Let's just try some
mess.
Yeah.
And the winner doesn't get that.
No, I know. Isn't that nuts?
Yeah.
So then it was about, we got video actually 10 days out and it still wasn't the lineup that ended up racing. And so I think we went to Dorney about the weekend before we moved there on the Wednesday or on Thursday or something. I tried out a lineup and it was terrible, but I hadn't got my toolbox with me. So we were like, right, we'll go back to the National Schools lineup, but I haven't got my toolbox, so we'll go out and try it again. We went out and tried it again, and it went better. It was one of those ones where like, oh. So then we moved to Henley. I was like, well, we'll try it once more. Had a really good session. We were like, right, okay. But then we just kept on every session. It got better and better and better. And then each round, you put together more and more and more of a race. And then it was one of those ones where we came up against Maidenhead in the semi-final. And so it's like my club that I've been at since I was 13 against Clare's Court. So it was quite a cool little, quite a cool thing to be part of.
And you both were at the same...
at the same boathouse, but because we're quite, at that point, big rivals, so hadn't really done much together. So yeah, and just boys put together like a really good race. And then suddenly we're in the final. We was like, well, this is a weird one. So kind of come the final, I think it was one of those years where everyone's just kind of like, well done, like you're in the final and that was it. It was one of those things where it's like, you're in the final, let's just see what we can do. We said like, right, well, halfway to basically Humpback Bridge, that's going to be, if you can keep yourself in touch and do something there, you're going to be there or thereabouts, and you can hear now on the commentary. So you've got the commentary, obviously, on the video, and then you've got the commentary within stewards, where there's, when they just go up an octave in Lightning Simon, they're like, Players Court rating, blah, 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 Windsor Boys rating, so, and he says, and Windsor Boys lead by a quarter of a length. And then almost as soon as he stops talking, he then tells you the rates again. This is on basically at the start of the enclosures. And he goes, Windsor Boys have raised their rate of striking, so whatever, Clare's Court raised their rate of striking, whatever. And then he pauses and he goes, and the crews are level. And you just hear you can hear the crowd. It's because I watched it like 1,000 times. You can hear the crowd go, ooh, and then it kicks off. and then Windsor Boys row away. But it was just one of those ones where to be level in the enclosures, these 4 lads that had just given everything. I mean, it was just like the most phenomenal crew, because it was, we had 3 boys that couldn't even get into trials, let alone kind of be knocking on the door or anything like that. Hadn't even got into the trials process.
Yeah.
Ollie Costley obviously was phenomenal. But yeah, just did everything right. And put together, it was one of those, it was almost a weird one, because it's a year that feels like a win, because as far as the process is concerned, it was just every single thing that they could have done.
You beat all your markers,
everything.
Just
and
because there was one crew that was better doesn't mean you didn't have the best year.
And they got the record. Yeah. They got the course record.
Really?
Just annoyingly, somebody had got it 1 second before them that had lowered the bar.
And then also that year you've made up 9 seconds between that final to the winners, and I know Costley doesn't talk much, but you worked so hard in that race. I doubt he spoke for a week up there.
Yeah. Also, so that was amazing.
Yeah, like Windsor, Maidenhead, Clare's Court, top 3 crews in an event that's what's normally oversubscribed by about 30 extra crews. That's pretty. Yeah, and Leander, that's pretty awesome.
Isn't it bizarre though that you've got like that epicenter? I think the first time it had left the Thames Valley was when Scullers won it a couple of years back, and it's just it always stays within 10 miles of the regatta. People come from all over the world. And so
you've got Borlase, Leander, Windsor, Clare's Court, Maidenhead. I guess the trick is just to do your seat racing at Dorney.
But I mean, it is weird though that that's the case. I don't know why.
It's not exactly home water, but I guess they have more time on it.
Yeah,
autumn.
I guess also just sculling in this area. Like if you get win at Marlow Spring, like one of the smaller regattas, you've probably got to be one of the top in the country. So it's just kind of like the standard is just set very early on. You've got to achieve something that's weird, like a weird level. Wasn't it like Michelangelo? All of those artists that all were in the same sort of area and just bounced off one another. Yeah. And as it comes Clare, just comparing Clare's Court to Michelangelo.
Well, you built it, so you have the right to do that.
What a masterpiece.
I like that analogy.
Yeah,
that's good. I'm going to use it.
No one goes fast without any competition. There's got to be someone pushing you to that performance.
I mean, I think it's an era. Obviously it's going to change, and there will be people that will take that on. But it's a cool little era. And also, I think those 2 finals being against Windsor, obviously, like Windsor's like the crew, like the club that have had have made such a stamp on that event ever since it started. Like it makes it, you feel like you're in a classic final if you're against them, sort of thing.
But plus also, like, it's interesting the way they row, because they don't historically have the biggest guys.
No.
They have quite a few J16s sometimes in their first quads racing the finals, and you just think like, wow, they're not even wearing all-in-ones. They're wearing like half gimp suits with like short sleeves.
Who's head coach over there?
Wilkie. So yeah. So it's
he's doing a cracking job. Yeah,
amazing. And it's kind of and as much as we might be rivals, like Wilkie was at my wedding when I was at Junior Worlds in Duisburg. Obviously, I was with Emilio Hernandez from Windsor Boys, who actually Wilkie lived at his house at that point as well. So he kind of came out. Yeah, so I've known him for a long time. So we might be rivals with same with all of them, but we get on well.
Small world.
Yeah, very small world. Yeah.
And then recently, you sort of dipping your toe. I say recently, but obviously we saw the campaign from Henley.
The plotters. Yeah. So it's a weird one. So I basically, so we had another fast crew from the school in 2019, and then COVID happened, and then in 2019 I had my first child. Well, I didn't have him. My wife had him. So we had our first child, Walt, and then COVID hit, and then we've had Molly as well. So it's just a little bit of a different time, and I got to a point in the end where I didn't feel I was doing a good enough job with my coaching, and also at the same time I wasn't doing a good enough job with my parenting. So kind of something had to go. I spoke to the school and just said that I can't carry on doing it how I'm doing it. they were great, and they said, we don't want to lose you. So they created a role which was basically to try and spread the culture we built within the boat club across other sports within the schools, and to kind of support the other sports and all the rest of it.
That's cool.
So it was a great little role, but it was quite challenging because obviously I'm not in charge of any of those other sports. I'm just there to support the coaches and bits and pieces like that. And so I went alongside doing that role. I started coaching the J14 boys at Clares Court, which I hadn't done in 10 years or so, kind of since we started making the boat club. But so it's very, very different challenge. But so from my point of view, I feel like I'm starting to develop again as a coach by doing that sort of thing. I'd kind of been the head of boys row or head of rowing then, but it was kind of primarily boys for a long time, and obviously at Maidenhead we're kind of going down that same path for quite a few years. So to kind of be doing something different again was really refreshing and really challenging, but in completely different ways to trying to win a Henley campaign or anything like this. But very, very similar. Not similar at all, actually, but very kind of challenging all the same. So then I started coaching the J14 boys, and I started working alongside Jack Jesselman with the senior girls at the school, kind of in the support role of him. And then I started rowing myself outside of school. So in 2021, as obviously that was that late Henley. So it was a bit more like of an informal Henley and an informal year. So as a coaching team, we were just like, should we just chuck a 4 in? And my coach had just not long since during COVID passed away. Derek passed away. So I thought it'd be quite cool to just do another Henley, kind of almost sort of in his honour. So we put together this 4 and qualified, which was that was all we wanted to do. That was great. And then we came up against Kingston, who were one of the favourites. We were 5 lengths down going through the enclosures. I remember the bloke in front of me, Jack, said, "Up." I was like, no. Why would we do that? Anyway, but I just got into it again. But in fact, I primarily got into cycling for the first time in a decade. So I started cycling and then kind of used that, and then we put together, I think we'd done 5 or 6 sessions. We were that crew that everyone doesn't want to turn up because probably there was somebody training all year and we kind of ruined it for them. So anyway, but it was amazing to qualify, and it meant a lot because it was obviously, it was rowing for Maidenhead at Henley again. Derek would have absolutely loved it that we had a senior men's 4 racing at Henley and blah, blah, blah. So that was great. And then, so in 2016, I moved to Henley from Maidenhead. So I stepped away from the SL6, which was a big, it was weird, into the RG9.
Nice.
And then,
big up.
and then, so there was a group of lads that I used to race against when I was younger that were training at Henley Royal Club called the Plotters, or they self-proclaimed the Plotters. So I went and just joined in with them, really. My first day I was meant to join in with them. I got COVID. So actually, probably to begin with, they just thought I was just all chat. So after about 5 weeks of having COVID, I finally got back into a boat. And my first session, I think we were just paddling, and my heart rate was 186 or something. I was oh, my God. So then that year, there was a bit of a senior men's group at Henley Rowing Club. And then some of the Plotters kind of made up the last places in that 8, and we qualified for Henley again, which was great. And then last year with padders and a load of, I think we had an average age of 42, and there was across the crew there was 18 children. So it was just amazing. It was a really cool little thing to do, and also it was. I mean, it's not a big deal in the rowing world, but it just meant so much to everyone in the boat to do it again. So that was great. It was really good. We had a good, group cheering us out the boat tents, and then to qualify, there were some people in the boat in tears and stuff it's like as it should be if you qualify. It's like a massive deal.
I think that's one of the best things about Henley Regatta, and it's forgotten about. You can have absolutely nothing to do with winning it, but you can win.
Yeah, exactly.
My school had never got through the first round at Henley.
Yeah,
and my crew didn't unfortunately do it. The year after they did. And it was it was insane. Like the whole school was was the best thing the school's ever done. And then the next year I was at Leander, like winning the Thames Cup, and but it was like the same feeling. It was whatever your mountain is.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing, isn't it? You kind of set your own targets. So that was great, and that was kind of. So we generally work. Like everyone gets together on a Thursday. So I mean, it's a little bit different. We're taking it a bit more seriously this year. But last year and previous to that, it was basically Thursday night. When you meet at 6:30, it's something on the ergo through the winter, or in the summer you get on the water. And generally everyone's got kids, so everyone's got to get away sharpish. So it's like 6:30 start. You don't get in there and have a bit like you're in, on, go. And then it's almost compulsory. You have to go and have a pint afterwards. So you can finish a session, have a pint, go. It's always one of those ones where like 5 minutes before, and everyone's like, or someone will go, anyone want another pint? You're just like, and you neck that, it's great. You kind of, so that's the Thursday night. And then a Sunday morning, 7:30, we get down there. It's changed again. It's changed now. So we could get a little bit more distance. We row from the rowing club to the bottom, back up, and that was it. And we go in, everyone would go and have a coffee together and then go home. And it was just brilliant. But it was perfect because it's exactly what you wanted. Everyone that was rowing there was, had done something to a really good level in the past. So you were kind of almost guaranteed a good crew. And it was just great to go and kind of get going up and down the river. And then I remember like last year, we went to the head. We were like, this is we came like 112. Everyone's devastated. We figured out, we haven't actually done more than 16K a week at any point.
You can't be too angry.
Exactly. It's only like when you actually look at what we're doing, it's like, actually, probably that's pretty good off the back of absolutely no training.
Yeah. That's brilliant.
So it's a really good little group that I'm part of there.
That sounds fun, yeah.
And again, it's kind of going back into rowing again. It's almost like I feel a bit like I'm kind of developing again as a coach.
I was going to say, do you think that's helped?
Yeah, so I don't want to just go down the same routes all the time. So coaching J14 boys, rowing myself again, and like just processing things. So 2022, that girl's quad. I coach something and then go away and just when you're paddling along, just be thinking about how can I explain this differently? Am I explaining the right thing, and all those different things. So it's really helpful on that front to kind of just process things that I've always done with the boys for all those years, how we can do it differently. So, and then, so it's kind of come onto that on 2022. So Jack was leading the girls there, and it was just a really small little group. And they qualified for the first time in 2021. So we had a girls crew in the regatta, which was amazing, made a round, really like phenomenal. And then 2022, we just kind of like, right, let's see what we can do, really. It was one of those years again. We knew we had kind of 4 pretty decent athletes, but I've not really worked with girls before, so I didn't know like markers, I didn't know times, percentages, all those different things. Rig, like all these different things. You speak to loads of people, and I have kind of like my own ideas on rig and what you should do, and people were saying really different things to what I thought. I was like, oh, okay. And so we just kind of Jack and I just tried a load of different things, and I absolutely love coaching with him because it's just a good laugh, So, I coached with Clarkey for a few years, and then Tom Gearing, so John Gearing's son, coached with him for 4 years. So he was there 2016 to 2020. And then, and then Alex has now taken on the boys. Jack's kind of leading up the girls. And so to work with Jack's brilliant. And it's kind of, we had a really, just a great little group. And then we had one girl go down ill and just kept getting a kind of a repeat illness. And then we had a girl who'd started as a J15 in that year. So she started in the September as J15, but we needed a 4th person for the crew. And so she then kind of, in April, she was still in one of the wide singles, or maybe March, still one of the wide singles.
Wow.
And then she didn't want to go on training camp, but her sister was in the boat, so she was coming. So then she went on training camp. And I was meant to be going on that camp, and I got COVID for a second time on that camp. Literally, like, it was about 3 or 4 days before that camp started. I was like, right, I'll come the next day. And then it was like, in the end, I was like, I don't think I'm coming, just absolutely just in pieces.
At least that wasn't like an international camp. That was the residential one, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
We're in Northwich that year because we couldn't go to Hazelwinkle because it was overseas. Because of lockdown. So then off the back of that, it was just one of those ones where it was again, we just pulled like another piece of the puzzle. National Schools Regatta, they came third, which is phenomenal, really massive result for the school. And then it was kind of, then we started pulling a few more layers into it, and coming into Henley, like they were just sort of hitting a good rhythm, started to, do what we'd been hoping to do. And it was quite bad because like I was sending them clips of different crews that we could pinch things from and different rhythms and all the rest of it. And then I kind of, having always coached boys, like every crew I was sending was men's crews. So then we went away and I was like, right. So then I kind of, went back to like when I was a teenager, just repeatedly watching different world champs, different whatever, all these different things. So we kind of had a couple of crews and we were like, we want to pinch this, we want to do that, blah, blah, blah. And then, went into Henley, had a really good couple of rounds, and then went into the Saturday against Shiplake, who obviously were the holders from the year before.
Okay.
And then kind of put together a good piece for that, and then up against Redwood Scullers on the Sunday from San Francisco. And it was another one that was just like a classic players' school race, was kind of like just keep there or thereabouts, and then see what you can do later on. And girls absolutely just smashed it. Really, it was great. So it was so that was another win for the boat club. So it's actually over the course of the since 1984/5, they've had 4 Henley wins now. So it's quite a successful little group. I know Brooks have 7 in 1 year, but for us over that period,
to put it into perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, but again, that's 30 years of work.
Yeah,
it's gone into that.
Yeah. I think that kind of just highlights how ridiculous what they are doing is. Kind of, it's a massive deal for us to have 4 over 30, nearly 40 years.
Yeah, and there's a lot of clubs that hang on to 1 back 20 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
And that can be an impressive thing.
Yeah. So, nuts.
Can you remember a few of those crews and those videos that you were focusing on?
Dutch sculling at the moment is like phenomenal across the board, I think. The Dutch men and women. I don't know who's coaching there, but they're doing something right.
It's some guy called Francesco, is an Italian rower from London and Rio.
Is that right?
He then went over to coach Nearest. I literally saw it this morning because he just won World Rowing Coach of the Year.
Oh, did he?
Award, yeah.
Oh,
and then he's been coaching Nearest since I think after 2018 or something.
Yeah.
And then after Tokyo, he started coaching the national team, and obviously they've just been growing strength.
Yeah. Just so the Dutch we looked at a lot. What else did we look at? There was an Aussie men's double from 2012. I don't know if you remember. Not 2012, 2008. It's really kind of, they won gold in 2008. Just like phenomenal little rhythm. So we watched that. But primarily Dutch women's sculling was, and I think still is great. And I think it's actually got better in the last 18 months. And we already thought they were like phenomenal. So the Dutch we watched a lot. And then it's kind of, I don't know, like coaching's changed. I think you guys touched on it a while back. Like, can you imagine getting a video sent to you and having your stroke dissected and the voice recorded onto it? Like, that is such a huge asset and tool. Like, you can definitely overuse it, but to have that sort of thing is a massive asset. I remember my dad had to either rent or borrow a video camera from work. We then had to organise for a launch to come out with me and my pairs partner. We videoed the session, got it put onto 2 videos so that I had one, and then Banksy had said, if you've got any footage you'd want me to dissect, send it in. So then we sent a video into him to give us feedback, which we never got either. But that's how much of it like a challenge it was to get like video analysis feedback.
Well, even when I rocked up at Leander in 2014, we just have footage from the Saturday sessions. Like the entire club would do pieces, I think like 2-3 Ks or something like that. And then there would be a coach on the bank, and they would record all the crews coming past. And like once a week, maybe you were caught onto the camera.
Right. Yeah.
The focus was on the seniors anyway.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I was like, right, go have a look at this. But now it's
to be sent to your phone.
Yeah, airdropping to all your athletes like straight after the session.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
But also, as amazing as it is, do you think, like, I think personally for me, like coaching, I just never had a minute away from it. And also you have all our sessions and stuff with, because it was uni students, were planned through either like Facebook chats or like WhatsApp chats. So they're constantly throughout the day, oh, Tom, I just looked at this one stroke. It's not perfect.
Yeah.
And then you're like trying to help this, like, it's just one stroke. And then someone else has got a problem. And then you just feel like it's just...
Yeah, I think there's definitely a time and a place to use it.
Yeah.
Like if you use it all year, or like, I don't know, I haven't got the focus to be able to use it all year as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if you can use it at the right time, you know, however many weeks out from a Henley campaign or whatever it might be, then it can be really helpful.
So I was dissecting some footage from Zeidler and the Dutch scholars as well. And like they obviously use the Dutch in particular. They don't have any concept 2s that they use in their facility. No, they go purely RP3s.
Oh, really?
And because they're so fluid, we're talking about like that fluid sculling, etc. Like it seems that they're almost like cutting out. If you look at the power curve, it's obviously like a half circle.
Yeah.
You cut out a few percent on either end.
Yeah.
And then you just got that really powerful rhythm.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to that.
That's what they're doing.
So many single scholars very short. Like Andre Sinek, just...
But it's like, if you look at juniors, how many of them go over vertical with their shins? And then you look at an international regatta, barely anyone gets vertical with their shin. It's bizarre.
Yeah, it's like 3/4 slide almost.
Yeah.
It's like from the outside, even though it's not. But like this seems like this is what the Dutch are doing. They're just staying in that fluid rhythm where they can like just apply the most power per second.
They must have something funny with the rig to be able to, I don't know. I'd love to just kind of pick their brains.
A bit heavier, a bit shorter.
Yeah.
Possibly. It might be something to do with the foot plate positions as well. Like one of the things I noticed, I was thinking about it this morning actually, when I was rowing in Poland. Actually, I came to trial when I saw that I came third. Then I had to use a single that I was sharing with another guy from my club.
Yeah.
And then before I even got out onto the boat, I had to like change the angle of a foot plate and everything because it's like I could barely get up the slide. Like my feet were so high up and everything.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something to do with that.
They got something right. But then so this is another thing working with other sports. Trying to explain the sport to non-rowers, it can be so helpful. So a mate of mine put me on a really geeky WhatsApp group. I don't know why he thought of it. It doesn't exist now, but it was like a proper dweeby thing. But basically, it was called Knowledge Share. And he'd put himself and like 3 other mates on it, and everyone had to explain something that the others wouldn't get, whether it was with like finances in their career or like whatever it might be.
That's cool.
And I was like, they're all like doctors and big money city boys. I was like, I haven't got anything that you guys can. So I just thought, all right, well, I'll explain rowing to them. And they asked these questions. I was like, oh yeah, no, that's. So then it made me like completely think differently about it. And I was doing this with the head of sport at Clare's Court a couple of months back. And I was talking about, so they once did a video analysis of, do you remember Greg Rosetsky, the tennis player? Yeah. He used to have like a phenomenal serve. Yeah. And I remember them dissecting it on TV, and they said, right, they started with his feet. Now I look at his feet. So to begin with, he crouches down, blah, blah, blah. And then they basically showed it was like a whip going through his body up to the top of the racket. And then it just like exploded off of his racket. And I was saying like that's similar sort of thing with the drive. And he was like, the head of sport and head of rugby was like, oh yeah, so like the summation of forces. I was like, what's that? He was like, the summation of forces. It's like how every projectile is thrown. I was like, what the hell is this? So you can look it up it's like an A-level or GCSE PE question. The summation of forces is basically the drive phase. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of, and it's the same whether you're lifting a weight, throwing a ball, whatever it is. It starts with your bigger, slower muscles, and then you work through to your smaller muscles. And the more muscles you can recruit, and the order in which it happens is the same in everything. If you think about power cleans, if you think about throwing a ball, throwing a javelin, whatever it might be, it's exactly the same. So it's not like, it's nothing new. This has been since people were throwing spears. It's like, it's the same technique people have used for years. I was like, yeah, how have I been involved in rowing for nearly 30 years? I've never heard of the summation of forces. So you can look it up. There's a really good video that some like PE teacher in Australia's done. And he breaks down throwing, and he starts throwing with just his wrist, then his elbow, then his shoulder, and then he uses his upper body, and then he does a run up. I was like, what the hell? And then he does a power curve for each part of the throw as well. So he's like, your legs will have a power curve, and your body will have a power curve, as will your shoulder and your forearm and your wrist. And the trick is to make sure that the next part follows on when that hits its peak power. I was like, this is just gold. Like, how have I never heard of this before?
I remember.
This is my reaction right now.
I remember when I had our first coach, I think it was Jeff Bacon down at Leander.
Jeff Baker. Matt Baker's dad.
No. Jeffrey Bacon, I think it was called.
Oh, okay.
Different guy. Okay. Anyway, yeah, he was like, he just stopped us and he was like, oh, everyone says it's legs, then bodies, then arms. It's not. It's legs and bodies, and arms,
right.
bodies and arms.
Yeah.
And that's like the first time in my head when I clicked was like, it's not 3 separate movements. We're trying to bring the curve all the way through.
Yeah.
And like, I'm sure other people had told me that and I hadn't listened, like just for some reason that way.
Yeah.
As funny as a coach is that you try and think of different ways to say something.
Yeah.
Until it clicks.
But I was speaking to Robin Williams was down with us a few weeks back, sitting in on a session with Alex. And this is like my new thing. I was just like, have you ever heard of this? And he was like, yeah. No, when I was at Cambridge, they had a Commonwealth weightlifter come down and talk about weightlifting technique. But he was like, I don't know, he'd been a weightlifter previously, and he was like, wasn't that big a bloke, and he cleaned like 140 or cleaned and like just ridiculous amount of weight. And he was like, it's not that I'm that strong. I just have got the timing. And he was talking about the summation of forces. Yeah. And the timing of it is the big thing. So that's kind of like, that's blown my mind. I don't know. I kind of, one of those things to obsess over when you're sat on the erg or whatever for hours. But
yeah, no, it's good though. It's like nice to hear from what you've said. Like, again, for me, like going back and teaching novices is so you have to really remember that no one understands the language of rowing, and it's completely bonkers.
Yeah.
Actually break things down, and it makes it a lot more simple in your own head.
But it's weird, isn't it? When you first start teaching people to row, you're teaching them. And then I think kind of as time goes on, you go from kind of teaching to coaching.
Yeah. And
it's kind of like, and they're so weird though. It's kind of like, if you give too much freedom to begin with, like, they're just not going to get it.
Yeah.
So, but it's kind of like as time goes on, you need to know, like, I'm going to let go of that, let go of that.
Yeah, and you need to like drip feed information because you can very easily overwhelm people. Like when you first start teaching them how to row, like sometimes you have to almost like dumb down certain parts of the stroke, and then later be like, okay, cut. Now we need to like go back over on this, and there's like actually a few more things in
the analogy I once heard about it is like, have you ever done a first aid course when they go they do like situations, like you're going to walk into a room, this person's bleeding, this person's unconscious, this person's screaming, like what order do you treat people in? So it's called triage. I was like, that's it with coaching. Like, it's very easy to go in and point out a load of things that someone's doing wrong. But I think the art of it is like figuring out what order.
A bit first.
Like, so like the person, they always say like the person who's unconscious, you treat them first because you don't know what's going on there. And then you go to the person who's whatever it might be. And it's kind of like, it's very kind of similar with coaching. I think you kind of, if you're working on the wrong thing, or even on the wrong, the right thing, but at the wrong time in the season or whatever.
I think that's is triage, but with timing.
Yeah.
So I think that's like the greatest skill of a finishing coach. Would be like picking the right thing that I can make the most amount of improvement in the small time that we have.
Yeah.
So those skills of like, oh, it's September, we can really start working on shape.
Yeah, exactly.
This is going to take a really long time.
Yeah.
Whereas like we're racing in 2 weeks, like stuff the shape. just drag it out. Like we're not gonna get there in 2 weeks.
Yeah. But it's kind of, but I think that's the thing. As you get more experience, you kind of think, okay, well, we can kick that one down the road for a little bit because we need to get this bit ingrained, and right now's the right time to bring X, Y, and Z up.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about training juniors and in general, like seeing them advance. Like obviously, like you've overseen like athletes go from like you said year 7 to year 12, I think. And oftentimes you see with junior athletes, they can like have a really nice progression up until like their final year of junior, like J18 year. And then they go into under 23 and maybe they don't have another gear, or like sometimes they burn out or they've done too much too early. Like how do you find the balance and like possibly what do you think is causing that, like that we could avoid when training those athletes?
I think you kind of have to. I mean, I think like the way you train as a senior is very, very different to how you train as a junior, and it's kind of like then it becomes kind of difficult, but you have to keep that in mind when you're talking to people that are looking at it from a senior perspective to people that are looking at it from a junior perspective. Mm-hmm. And I think really, like we're talking about the layers, like if you're doing the right thing, effectively you're doing I'm not necessarily going to go into all of it, but you're doing one thing through the winter and the kind of the spring, and then kind of spring into summer, you probably train more like a senior. But you kind of need that winter of doing the right things as a junior, so that you're kind of getting the right foundation for later on. Because I mean, I think a lot of people tend to kind of have a bit of a break from rowing at the end of junior, but at the same time at Clays Court, we've had a lot of people that have stuck with it and have gone on, which is a great thing. Mm-hmm. And I think it's down to just kind of giving them the right sort of foundation, which is kind of generally around conditioning. Really, is making sure they're in the right sort of shape to be able to then withstand what is effectively just a very repetitive sport.
And in terms of like training versus development, like obviously you can put them on the program, you can make them do loads of miles and like do loads of hard ergos, but then you also like want to think about developing them as an athlete like for their entire career, so like what they're going to do when they're like 22, 25, 30 possibly if they stick with it. But like, what are some of the most common pitfalls that you can avoid? So it's like not to put too much on them so that they won't have another gear to go. Like,
I think the way I think of it is like writing a story. Like if you tell them the end of the story in the first season, first season is effectively chapter 1. So if you tell them everything in that first season, it's going to be amazing first season. They'll love it. But then the second season, they'll be like, okay, that's very similar to last year. And then, you know what I mean? Like, you have to really have, again, we go back to like the layers thing. You have to tell the story. And I think if you do it right, they'll have, lots and lots of years of kind of what it is that they're, what they're trying to take from the sport. Yeah. It's kind of like, so if you, I mean, like what we do with the J14s, like, very, very consciously don't do certain things. And as a boat club, we very consciously, they don't have the best kit because, again, that's kind of something to look forward to further down the line. Yeah. They don't have necessarily the full they don't have the full program by any shape or form, and they don't do a load of different things, but it's more so because you have to, you've got to do enough so that they catch the bug and they get that hook of knowing what the sport's all about. But it's more so kind of trying to, just give them enough each time. So you're always drip feeding another thing. And it's kind of, I think that's often what is done wrong at junior level. You get lots of clubs and schools that are phenomenal at J14 and 15, but then by the time they get to J18, the kids aren't interested.
So you're saying sometimes you just have to like sacrifice possibly your seasonal goals or like goals for a certain race in order for the long-term development.
I think you have to kind of outline what success. I think that goes back to what we just said very early on. What is a success that look like for you as a squad, or you as an athlete and you as a kind of as a coach of a group? What does success look like for that year? And as long as they're kind of within that range, then sweet. Kind of it's then on to the next one, bit more of the story, and kind of so on and so forth. So it's kind of like, you want it to be a page turner, where they want to get onto the next. Yeah. They don't want to put the book down, which is challenging at certain times. Like this winter, being off the water a lot, that makes it really tough. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, you have to do it for complete and utter non-performance reasons. It just has to be good fun, and they just want to be there that day they tick the session off. They want to play with their mates. Might be that you have like a, British Bake Off, over a few weeks through January or something like that. You know what I mean? Like those sort of things, it's just going to get people enjoying the sport through the dark times until, the sun comes out again and it's a little bit more enjoyable again. Yeah. Able to get back on the water. But then you get people probably like us and like a lot of rowers that just love it. Like, at the moment, I've started doing hour ergos. I love them. Like, what the hell is going on? Who likes that? But it's kind of like there's a little group of us at Henley all doing these things. We're all trying to one-up each other, trying to figure out what our Christmas challenge is over, over that period. I mean, it's idiotic. Well, why the hell would you want to do that? But it's kind of like,
why not?
It's probably because I had the story written to me. So my head isn't on that 1 hour on the ergo. My head is elsewhere because I want to have that end of the story or whatever it might be again. But it's because kind of, we've been through all those layers before, and you do get people that are more than happy to just sit there and do absolutely nothing. But I think that was the thing going from Maidenhead Rowing Club. So I came from, as we said earlier on, absolutely loved it. Went to a rowing club. Everyone is at the rowing club to row because they absolutely love it. And then I went to a school and people turned up that were like, I don't want to do rugby or I don't want to football or whatever. It's like, okay, so do you want to row? Like they don't even really want to row. And it's kind of then suddenly like, right, well, how do I motivate them to want to do this sport? How do I show them what this sport kind of can have and can bring
and can do for them as well, like as an athlete development. I think that's brilliant. Like I really hope more people like pick that up, because like you see so much talent like going through the ranks and trials, etc. Like we're talking with Matt Aldridge, like I think his junior 8 or something, like none of them row anymore.
Oh really?
And he's like the only one left. So like I think if we can like also like retain more people, and the sport's gonna grow. So I think that's absolutely brilliant advice.
That again comes back to like what we were talking about with the sprint regatta. You know what I mean? Like to do the regatta, to do rowing at the top level. Like, everyone wants to think that they're doing it at the top level. Like when you're 40 plus and you've got kids and all the rest of it, not many people have time to be able to do like training for a 2K race. But you might be able to train for a 500 meter race, and you might have a group of lads that you used to row with when you were younger that would be keen as us for that sort of thing. Yeah. So that's where I think that this sport in the country, or maybe worldwide, needs to look at what's going on there and have some sort of purpose behind non-traditional rowing. I love traditional rowing. Obviously, that's why we're doing this.
Talked about it with the beach sprint stuff, which I think is exciting. Yeah, it's different, and it's a shame that we've lost lightweights, rowing, and all those kind of things. But it's it's different, it's fun. I speak to people who've done it; they find it really exciting. There's a great atmosphere there.
Yeah,
you can watch the whole race and see on the beach in the sun.
Yeah,
and it's a different experience.
Yeah,
and I think there's a place to have that and what we do.
Yeah, because I remember again with my cousin. He used to have all the videos so they used to have Leyland Daft sprints. Have you ever heard of Leyland Daft sprints? So Leyland Daft sprints and serpentine sprints, they all used to, this was channel.
I remember the serpentine. Well, it was before my time. I remember hearing
it. Was before my time as well. Yeah, he used to have these videos. So when he was off traveling, I'd be like watching his rowing videos when I was in my early days and watch like, I think it was serpentine sprints, but that was like an international thing. So the Russians were there. Abanyalis were doing it. Yeah. There was a Russian twins as well. I don't know. There was like all of these different countries doing these races. Martin Cross was involved. Eric Sims, Sally Hassan, Adam Cliff. Like all of these like great. Obviously Redgrave, Holmes, all of that lot. But it made a big thing, and you could have these regattas. If we were to get like a sprint thing, I don't know. I sound like I'm campaigning for it, but it would be a good thing. You could also have regattas in the middle of big cities.
Yeah, they have the Red Bull League in Germany, or they used to, and they did those 500 meter sprints. Yeah, and they were fun. And then like you'd have different clubs, and then you'd have leagues and standings and rankings, and like why not?
And if you had it like if you had the nationals or whatever weekend after Henley, then you would keep like you could say to international crews, "I'll stick around and get stuck in." I guess it would be not nationals then, but whatever. We'd figure out the details.
Unfortunately, Lucerne is quite often the week after, isn't it? Bloody.
Yeah, but like
someone call up this, get out of the way.
Yeah, have they heard about it? Yeah. But you know what I mean, like American unis, Aussie unis, crews that came over, if they found out there was like a sprint head, like a Red Bull series. There we go. We've got the sponsor sorted as well. Yeah. Just a few more details. We're there.
I'll just clip this up and send them an email.
Yeah, you're definitely not the only person. Like spending a lot of time at regattas, speaking to Rory at All Mark One and a bunch of other people, Pete Brewer, just loads of people, and they're just all sort of saying the same thing. Like, where's the fun regatta?
Yeah,
how can we all go hell for leather into Henley Royal Regatta?
Yeah,
and then everyone stops rowing completely.
Yeah,
and then we don't start till the weather gets bad.
Yeah.
What happened? I know it's difficult with the school and stuff, but. Yeah, no, definitely from a club perspective, I think there could be room.
But to have, like a proper sprint series, it was like almost like another avenue to the sport. Like in cycling, you've got so many different distances. Same in kayaking. Yet rowing seems to be head season, 2K season. That's it. It's kind of like, you've got some local sprint regattas, but it's almost kind of like second tier.
Yeah.
What's above? And it's like, well, why? Why is there not some sort of sprint element that's going to keep people involved, in their later years, or kind of mean that they feel like they're still doing a performance sport, but able to train differently for it.
Yeah, you can perform high, but not over 2K, but you can still perform high.
You'd have to do hour ergos like us idiots.
I think
I don't know if you guys do 2 ergos, 2 hours.
I don't mind a half hour, but that's about as far as I go.
I think a first tier sort of like sprint season is a brilliant idea. And I think the landscape of the sport is definitely shifting. I saw World Rowing are talking about putting their digitization plans for like after LA and how the sport's going to evolve. And like they said, we're in this kind of like pivotal moment of like now shifting what the sport is. So I think, why not?
We need to get it into like Strongman, Arnold Classic, those sort of things. It's just going to give it like a completely different avenue that's just not been there.
Imagine Ronnie Coleman back in the day screaming, "Yeah, buddy!" on the rowing machine.
When Brian Shaw does it,
it's
that's nuts.
I don't know how that thing stays in one piece.
I don't want to service that crap.
we better do some quick fire. One at a time.
That's right.
We always end with quick fire questions.
I can't remember what they are, but
brilliant. So we're going to get long answers. I was going to say, out of all the rowing venues that you've trained at, raced at, or visited, what are some of your favorites and why?
So we have a stretch that we train on Saturday mornings, which is the Clibden stretch, which we refer to as the Stretch of the Gods, which obviously is pinched from Lucerne, which is the Lake of the Gods, isn't it? Which I absolutely love. So that stretch is phenomenal. It's just, you've got basically like a hill down one whole side of it. It can be like blowing a hoolie and you'll get flat water, which is obviously brings about its own problems later on. But that's phenomenal. Lake Sarnen is somewhere I haven't been in a long time, but I love Lake Sarnen. I've done a couple of training camps there, and that's just
where's that?
In Switzerland. So it's where the Swiss teams based.
Oh, lovely.
That's an amazing place. And then another one which no one likes, but I love, is Hazelwinkle, because it's just like I think it's more so because of just how many great camps I've been a part of there.
Nostalgia.
But it's also we just get some great training done there, and then got good ice creams in the cafe as well, which is always a big plus. The Dent Blanche.
It's just like what you need and nothing more.
Exactly.
Accommodation, food that works. The lake, no frills,
exactly.
And no internet.
Every time we get there, though, you get kids like, because everyone raves about it. Well, I do. And we get there and they're just like,
is this it?
Literally that. Is this it? And then by the end of the week, generally, they'll love it. The Hazelwinkle, and actually in the restaurant at Hazelwinkle, they've got 3 clocks. One is Hazelwinkle, one is Henley on Thames, and one is the Charles River of Boston. Nice. Which in my last house, we had 3 clocks and we'd had that stencil on the wall as well.
With Hazelwinkle.
With Hazelwinkle, which I showed them and they absolutely loved.
That's brilliant.
So that's probably one that you won't get again. But those 3 places I absolutely love. Really nice.
My next question, if you were to repeat or do over a regatta or a race once again when you're 60 or 70, what would it be and why?
So a race that I've done or a regatta that I've been to?
So, for example, like you might have loved the thrill of an event so much that you'd want to like relive it, or you want to do again when you're 60, or there's like a race that like you might not be that happy with the result and you'd like to go and change.
As far as a regatta is concerned, I think if I could do Henley when I was 60, that'd be great. I've moved my family there.
Nice.
I say moved my family there. Charles was quite keen. So, there was definitely a good level of obsession over that regatta. And as far as a race I'd like to do again, so of races I'd done myself, semi-final Henley in 2001, that was great. It was just, I was in a crew with Barry Gardner, Ben Tipney and Rich Ellerer, who actually I'm rowing with again now, Henley. And that bloke, he's like, I think he must be 5'10", 5'11", 85-ish kilos. He'll sit for an hour at 146. Like, he's just like a freak, unreal. And so I'm going to hold on to his coattails this season, hopefully. The semi-final then, though, because I'd been in Barn Bar the year previously watching Rich Ellerer, and he was rowing with Nick Friend, who again I'm rowing with at the moment. When they had rode past Barn Bar. Do you remember old Barn Bar when it actually was in Barn Bar?
Yeah.
And there used to be like 5,000 people there, take 40 minutes to get to the bar. But if like a big race went past, people would cheer because other people were cheering. So it was almost rowing like through a football stadium. And I remember I think we were probably level or something, going through Barn Bar and it just erupting. Like, I'm sure most people there, or in fact, 99% of people there didn't care about the rowing, but I didn't care about that. It was like rowing through a football stadium. That was great. That was very Henley. And then we just, the race just went completely and utterly to plan. I was coached by Jez Moore, and a friend of his who just got bronze at the Karate World Championships had given us this speech beforehand. Amazing. I was the most fired up I've ever been for a race. And then the race went to plan. And the speech was like 3 hours before the race. So we're walking around. So that race, I'd like to do that race again. And then there was a school's head once that we just when you go off the line, you're like, oh, this is a good little rhythm. And then it just doesn't go. There was one of those that I was in. Either of those races probably. Maybe I've got some still to come, hopefully.
It's not over yet.
Good answers, yeah.
The one I go for is, if you could travel back in time to the age you were when you absolutely fell in love with the sport, so 13, 14, what advice would you give that kid?
I haven't got a clue. What did I say? You're going to think about that. I'll come up with the idea when I'm in the shower later or in the car on the way home.
I mean, lots of people said the same thing, just, confidence in yourself. Don't worry about what other people say. I think Jack was the first one who just gave himself a technical, you should have done this. I was like, I didn't mean it like that. Okay.
Keep the arm straight.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Or I'd just be saying, it's great. It's like, you'll have a great time. Which isn't advice whatsoever.
No, I know. That's simple.
I think as excited as I was about what was to come at that age, I remember, I don't know if this is a made up thing, but I remember there used to be a thing where they would say, if there was a atomic bomb, there would be a 4-minute warning. I don't know if this was a thing or not. There'd be a 4-minute warning if there was an atomic bomb.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was really young thinking, I wonder if I could get from my house to the rowing club so that I was on the river during that 4-minute, in that 4 minute, which I wouldn't have been able to. I think the fastest I ever ran there was 13 minutes. But I remember that's how much I loved it.
I love that. If the world's going to end,
I want to get on the river. Yeah, and I want to be there. That was it.
I like that.
I think it would just be, it's going to be as good as you hope it is.
Awesome.
Awesome. Loved it.
That's what a lot of people need to hear. Don't worry, don't stress. It's not the end of the world. It doesn't matter where you get to. Go and have some fun in it.
Yeah.
Take it day by day.
Yeah. And it's great that it's one of those things. I think, not being an academic, I found with school, I could put in loads more work and not get any more results with it. And yet with rowing, I could put in more work and I would get more back from it. It was just like, it's just exactly what you want it to be. Work harder, you get more from it.
It's very consistent.
Yeah. And it was just, brilliant. So I think that's one of the big things about the sport that I loved, and still love. It's like you guys doing this. You know what I mean? This is, you might, it might be a chore to have to do these and all the rest of it, but you'll get so much back from it. And
do you think it's a chore?
Well, I don't know.
Can you give anything better to do? Even sit down with people who I'm best friends with. I would sit down with Dave Bow, and it's he's one of my best mates. We won Henley together. But even that, how close we are, I never get to sit for 3 hours and just really pick his brains.
Yeah.
And it's a different kind of conversation. And at the end of the day, when we did this, we're if no one watches it, I'm having a great time. I don't care if no one watches it.
You've got to interview. Yeah. Amazing. So good.
Yeah.
It's great. I'm not talking about myself, by the way. But just some great people. And it's kind of
it's
you can have none of this. No one listened. And you guys have just so I think it's one of those things where it's kind of I don't know. I think it's one of those sports where you can...
Definitely. And it's also such a small sport that there's so many people, we've never a couple of times said hi. I know who you are. I know Claire Scott. Obviously, I coached Pete and in the crew in 2016.
I banged on about you enough.
You guys knocked us out in the first round. I was coaching the second
Oh,
Yeah,
no way.
but-
Sorry about that.
No, yeah,
no, it was
but it's-
Windsor Boys. It
Was that? Oh, sorry, that was Windsor Boys. But yeah, anyway, you know, like you there's so many people you know in rowing, but you don't know.
Yeah,
and it's
yeah,
another
yeah.
thing. It's like so great to just actually like.
And also, like, you are the product of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? And if every week we basically get to speak to these highly driven, very motivated, very successful people,
But also,
thank you.
don't you find in rowing, like, you get some people just be shy, but because they're quiet and they've done something, they will come across as almost like arrogant.
Yeah.
Which is weird.
Yeah.
You said
What I come across as arrogant.
No, you said that you used to be that quiet guy, and people would be like, "Oh, intimidated to speak to you."
That's not really in rowing, but yeah.
Right, yeah. But I think that's weird. But this is where, like, this podcast is good because you get to talk, you know. Well, I don't get to, but you guys talk to those people that you think, oh, they're not anything like I thought they would be.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
They're great.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who've, like Charles Cousins, even Tim Foster was like, oh, it's been so long since I've kind of had a chance to go back and remember all these good times and have us be like, that was awesome, you know, because you'll convince yourself that it wasn't. John Collins sat here saying, oh, well, you know, I went to 2 Olympics, I didn't quite get the... You went to 2 Olympics? What are you talking about? It's amazing. And like, because you can talk yourself down from it. So it's a nice chance sometimes for the people on the other side of the table to be like, that was all right.
Yeah. No, very much. So, I think it's great. And now that we don't have Regatta Magazine, I was like obsessed with Regatta Magazine. But this is like, you know what I mean? This is it.
Oh, thank you. Well, I really like the idea that we can, like, you know, bring the rowing knowledge, like, also like from the people that we know from like around the circuit and from like doing Rowgear, etc., and like kind of like put it in one place, centralize it, and just provide something that no one else is in terms of like, you know, an insight into the psychology of rowing at the top level, or like how to make schoolboy crews go fast, or what was it like rowing abroad, or, you know, the boat race, or rowing across the Atlantic, and all those sorts of like different things. Like, if we can gain enough eyeballs on the sport, I think we can help it grow. And I just think that rowing doesn't get enough recognition for what it is. Like you said, like you could be on the doorstep of Henley in Marlow or Maidenhead, wherever like Claire's Court is, and then, you know, these people don't know about the regatta, like what Henley Royal is.
Which is such a shame, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you think how many lives, people who've done it, how many lives have been changed by doing that sport?
Well,
and then yet it doesn't get the exposure where everyone can have a go.
So this is basically also like one of the primary motivators behind starting this. Is like, can we bring the rowing gold out there to the rest of the world? So the others can get to see how we live.
The only real like idea of like what we do is just like, what content would I have lapped up when I was 40?
Oh, right.
Let's just have a real loose chat. Let's get into the guts of it and kind of stuff. So.
I guess it depends how much of a geeky rower you were at 14. You know, like I'll talk to some kids and I'm like, oh yeah, so, you know, we'll talk about like Mike Drysdale, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, who? You're like, Mike Drysdale, have you?
Do you know who Susie Deer is?
Susie Deer?
Yeah.
I know the name, yeah.
Yeah, so we had...
we had in the team at Leander a bit.
Yeah, we were in Leander servicing, and then Steve William walks through.
Oh yeah,
and then like we say hi to him, etc. She's like, "What was it?" She said, "Like I don't know."
She just doesn't really. I know she doesn't reckon. I'm like, do you know who that is? She's like, I don't know who that is.
It's like Steve Williams. What are you talking about?
But then it is weird, isn't it, with like rowers, because they don't feel like they're famous as well. Like last year, so I've got Aquil Abdullah's book, which is Perfect Balance, and I've had it like ever since it came out, and I think I've ordered it like, I don't know how I got it, but anyway, I've got his book, and he's one of the stewards at Henley. Yeah. So last year at Henley Regatta, he was there, you know, in the middle of something, and I walked up to him, and I was like, excuse me, you don't have a pen, do you? He goes, yeah, but was like obviously busy something else. And he goes, yeah, here you go. And he handed me the pen, and I handed him his book. I said, could you sign that for me? And he was like flabbergasted that I had his book, and it was just like, for me, I've got like, that's in my downstairs toilet now. Like, I've got other rowing stuff in there. It's not just that book. But yeah, it was like, he obviously just doesn't, I don't know, it didn't seem like he thought of it himself as a big deal.
No, that's kind of a sign of someone who's successful, isn't it? You don't think that way.
Yeah.
I love that you're like, I don't have other stuff in the toilet. I have other rowing stuff.
I do. We refer to it as the Sir Steve Redgrave suite, because it's all the rowing photos and books and Henley programs and medals and stuff.
So speaking of famous people in rowing, last quick fire round question. Who are some of your rowing idols, or the people that you've looked up to during or post your rowing career?
I always was really obsessed with Tim Foster and the way he rowed. I just watched him loads, and he always seemed to be quite chilled, which kind of I identified with a bit more. My cousin, he was the reason I got into it. So I was like, he was like my idol for all of the years when we used to go and row him. And we never rowed together. Like I've rowed now since 1996, so coming on 30 years. He rowed from like mid 80s, and we've never been in a double together. So we need to put that right. But yeah, probably those two. I mean, obviously, but then I was at the era of Redgrave. Like my ceiling above my bed, I remember it was like my final year, and all of the paper cuttings of like Redgrave and his four, Sydney, Greg Searle, Gillian Lindsay and Miriam Button's crew, and all, remember, or Miriam Luke. Though that Olympics, that was like the ceiling above my bed. Just like I was so obsessed. I love that. I've got to do it. And I remember I didn't get invited to something, and there was a line in Redgrave's book from Spracklin, which was, "You've got to go and prove them wrong." And I was, oh yeah, that's perfect. So I wrote that, I typed that up and got it printed off, and that was on the roof of my bedroom above my bed. So Redgrave's got to be because of just how much of an impact him and Pinson
changed the game,
made during that time. So yeah, there you go. What's that for?
Yeah, that's brilliant. I think there's nothing wrong with having the best one of all time as your idol. Someone's got to have him as their idol. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Josty, this was fantastic. Thank you so much for coming down and just sharing your knowledge and sharing the gold. Hopefully other people will also pick up this knowledge and expand their rowing based off that. And at some point we'd love to have you on again, possibly maybe as a panel with some other people.
Oh yeah.
I think that'd be cool.
Don't worry, give us the nod. Thanks ever so much for doing it. As I say, it's great. It makes those bikes and everything fly by.
The hour-long ergos.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no,
I really appreciate it. It's been super interesting talking to you. I think it's quite funny how you talk about 2016, 2022 just sort of coming together. It's like, I think it was you bringing it together. But that maybe goes back to, what we're talking about, being humble. I think also really amazing to hear how you just kind of took it on and went and traveled around the world and went and spoke to some clubs. And I think you don't have to go around the world, but I think, talking about putting in what you get out or getting out what you put in. And I think there might be some clubs who obviously weren't open, but I think there were a whole bunch of clubs that if some aspiring coach was wanted to go and just get a different opinion or sit on a coach, just a case of going and talking to someone, be like, hey, could I come and sit?
Yeah.
I think that's such a huge thing. And it sounds like as well throughout your whole coaching career, you just keep kind of looking at different avenues, keep trying to learn. I think that's the best thing to learn from a coach, is to understand it doesn't matter how good as a rower you are, you can always be a better coach. And I think that's a good example that you've shown. So definitely is going to be stuff for people to learn from this for sure.
Oh no, cheers. Well, thanks very much, chaps. Really enjoyed it.
Looking forward to the next one. But on that note, that's everything for today's episode. So easy there.
Cue the music.